Hello, everybody. This is Ocean Robbins. I'm so excited that in about 15 minutes, we're going to begin our broadcast of episode 3 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to congratulate you for the courage, the tenacity, the curiosity, whatever it is that has brought you to this moment to be a part of this learning, this discovery, this food revolution. And I hope that you're learning things that are valuable to you so far, or if you're just joining us for the first time today, welcome. It's going to be awesome because today our focus is healthy gut, healthy life, how to nurture a thriving microbiome. We'll be starting episode 3 in about 14 minutes, and I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, welcoming you. As we move through the day, please post and engage in the comment section on the broadcast page so you can see what other folks are sharing and share your top takeaways, your aha moments, what this means in your life. Maria said, "This program is great. Love the information on brain health. I started this type of diet 2 months ago, and I'm glad that many of my choices are improving my brain health and also improving my heart and kidney health. I'm feeling much more healthy since I cut the meat out. Thank you." Wonderful, Maria. So glad that you're feeling good and aligned with the choices that are working for you. For everybody else, yesterday's focus was on brain health, and we had some phenomenal presentations looking at the diet and lifestyle choices that can optimize our brain health, of course, to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia, but also to prevent brain fog and also to have more clarity and mental agility and a better ability to remember the things that matter the most to us. The presentations were so fascinating, and so glad you were able to join us for it, Maria. Alisa said, "Blessings all around for today's session. I'm struck by how you dove deep into simplicity. Kudos to all of you involved in the creation of this incredible series. My takeaways from today: hydrate throughout the day and get lots of uninterrupted deep sleep. May we all be blessed directly from source," and so it is. Thank you, Elisa. Yes, sometimes we need all these high-tech interventions. We need all these extensive studies to show us that simple, basic, low-tech solutions can make a world of difference. And that's what we're seeing time and again here. When you give your body the right fuel, the optimal fuel, you prevent so many different problems that maybe never needed to happen in the first place. And you also can have more vitality, deeper sleep, more energy, more joy, more pleasure, more aliveness. So thank you for being a part of this journey with us. And yes, deep sleep is an important part of the formula that a lot of us can forget about because we get so focused on doing, being, and all the stuff we're up to. And actually taking the time to let go, to drop, is so important. And for the brain, particularly, as we were hearing yesterday, because your brain files things away when you go to sleep. And that's how you're able to have like that clear desk for the next day so you can get back to work and learn new things and grow in new ways because everything's gotten filed away. So that deep sleep is really critically important to brain health. Terry said, "I'm really glad to hear how more and more food is being shown for help with the brain. I know so many people with dementia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. Some of them have been close friends and they are having to care for their spouses. I miss them. It is so sad and such a degrading disease. Thank you for sharing all this information." Yes, Terry, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, the reality is that Alzheimer's is such a debilitating condition, and not just for the person who goes through it, but also for all the people that are impacted. And probably most of us in this journey have loved ones that have suffered this fate or are dealing with it right now. So for everybody who is experiencing loved ones facing this painful journey, I send you my love and my sympathy and my support. And I hope that what we're learning here can help all of us to have clearer minds and have less people going through this condition. Barb said, "This is very different from what I expected. I really like your format and the different experts popping in and out to emphasize the conversation we are having with our presenters. It tends to be more interesting and flows really well. I was expecting a one-on-one interview with Ocean with a different expert for 15 or 20 minutes on each episode. Thank you for this wonderful series. It came right at the start of my plant-based clean eating journey, and this information is excellent and pertinent to this new road I'm traveling." Well, Barb, thank you so much. This is our 13th Food Revolution Summit, and we've tried a variety of different formats, and we're really loving this docuseries format, and I'm so glad that it's working well for you as well. For those of you, by the way, who are interested in in-depth expert interviews, I want to make sure you know that in addition to the daily episodes, we do also have every day of the summit 3 more expert interviews with where we go in depth, and those are the interviews that fed into the docuseries. So we did 45 interviews with some of the top food experts on the planet, and then combined those together as a part of the docuseries episodes that we've created here. But if you do want to dive deep with any of the experts that you're hearing from, those interviews are also available 3 per day, also on the broadcast page after each morning broadcast, summit episode broadcast completes. And for those of you who get the empowerment package, you get ongoing unlimited access to all 45 interviews with the in-depth experts. So that's just another resource to know about. Jacqueline said, looking forward to the gut microbiome episode. I continue to struggle with gut issues. Thank you, Jacqueline. So many of us do, whether it's a little bit of discomfort or some gas or much more serious challenges. So today is going to be really fascinating for you, I'm sure, and for everyone else here. You know, as each speaker so far in this summit has shown us so clearly, the status quo is just not acceptable. It's a fast track to Alzheimer's, as we saw yesterday, also to type 2 diabetes and immune challenges, cardiovascular disease, and just feeling like crap. But there are incredible breakthroughs taking place as we come to understand what's possible when we really do make food the foundation of our health. And in so many ways, it starts in the gut. If you just joined us, we'll be starting today's broadcast of episode 3, which focuses on gut health, in about 7 minutes. Only recently have experts discovered the enormous connection between gut health and almost every aspect of human wellness. So in today's episode, we're going to share the latest breakthrough research behind the microbiome revolution. And we're going to look at the complex relationship between what we eat and common digestive issues, including bloating and gas, intestinal discomfort, what's often called leaky gut, chronic inflammation, and a whole host of related conditions. We're going to look into the world of the microbiome and its influence on digestion, immunity, mental health, autoimmune disease, and chronic illness. And we're going to look at the potential pitfalls of modern diets, excessive hygiene, probiotic pills, and antibiotic overuse. We're going to look at practical tips and actionable steps for improving your gut health and how you can nurture your microbiome with some all-natural, no-cost and low-cost solutions. So it's going to be awesome. And again, we'll be starting that in about 6 minutes. We've received so many moving emails and comments so far. And if you want to chime in and share what you're learning, what you're thinking, what you're wondering, what you'd like to ask about, please post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Jamie said, John and Ocean, both of you are truly beautiful souls to dedicate your lives to this noble mission of healthier people, animals, and planet. The Food Revolution Summit is my top priority every year, as I know I will learn and benefit immensely from the experts, and I love tuning in with this community. It would be wonderful if you could share the essential health tests which we can take to ensure we're on the right track and not lacking in some essential nutrients. Jamie, thanks so much for asking. That is a great question. We actually created a whole article on this topic because it's quite in-depth. So if you go to foodrevolution.org and you search for lab tests, you can find the article we wrote, which goes into a lot of detail, including a specific lab you may want to consider working with to get your exact test results that you want, although your doctor may also be able to prescribe them for you. So again, that's foodrevolution.org, and then just type lab tests in the search bar, and you'll find it. I'm so moved by all the folks who are engaging, and I just want to thank you again, all of you who are here right now, for being a part of this revolution. We've now cleared more than 310,000 people signed up for this summit. The word is still getting out. People are still pouring in, and it feels amazing because my dad and I and our whole team at Food Revolution Network have been working on this summit for the last year, and we've been developing summits for the last more than a decade now. And now we get to be here with you in this moment to share this message, and I feel so grateful that you're here giving your precious time and your attention to learning and growing and hopefully gaining resources that will help you put all this into action. Jeanette said, please, I want to know what is the recommended daily dose of vitamin D3 in the body? I know that is it about 5,000 units per day? And secondly, what time of day is best to take it? And what amount do we have to take like at night when there's no sunshine? And how much to take throughout the day? Well, Jeanette, thanks for asking. So this is actually a great example of why blood tests can be helpful, because there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Some of us do benefit greatly from taking vitamin D3. In fact, I would say most of us, but not everybody. And it is affected by how much sunlight you get on your skin, which also relates to seasons, but it's also affected by other factors as well. So it's a great thing to get a blood test and see where you're at. Most people can benefit from a couple thousand IUs per day. Some people need 5,000, some people need 7,000. That's not what's recommended for everybody. You can actually get too much. But getting a blood test can be great, and then having a supplement regimen and then testing again. Ideally, you want to be in the middle range of the range, not at the bottom. So you could be towards the bottom on the blood work and say, okay, I'm normal, that's fine. But ideal is a little bit higher than that. And I will say personally that I started taking vitamin D3 regularly about a decade ago. And before that, like most people, I got a cold maybe 3 times a year throughout my life. And since that time, I've gotten maybe 3 colds in total. And those have all come at times when I stopped taking it for a bit. So for me personally, I'm pretty sold on taking vitamin D3. I take about 7,000 IUs per day, but that's not for everybody. That's just what works for my blood work to get me to an optimal level. So again, it's a good thing to test. I take it in the morning because it's the sunshine vitamin, and I just think that maybe it's good for my body to get it early in the day. I don't think you need to take it more than once a day. And you may not need to take it at all, depending on your particular context. Donna said, I bought the whole empowerment package this year because last year I watched it and was motivated that week, but lost my motivation throughout the year. And I want to access everything every day so I can rewatch and get remotivated throughout the year. Wonderful, Donna. Thank you so much for being with us last year and participating in the free summit, and then for having that observation that it's easy to get motivated for a week and then lose steam. And so now you're taking a step to help yourself keep that steam going and that momentum going throughout the year. Bless you. I'm so glad you're going to have the empowerment package for life, and look forward to sharing this journey with you. I hope you'll report back next year and let us know how your progress has gone. And now it is almost time for us to begin episode 3. As we move through the day, please continue to share what you think, including your top takeaways and aha moments and how this is all landing in your life. Make sure you refresh the comments using the button provided there so you can see the latest ones that have been submitted, and you can also engage with other folks and respond to their comments so that we can keep this community going and growing. And by the way, you will notice if you scroll through the comments a bunch that our team has been very active responding to comments along the way. So you could learn quite a bit as you read people's questions and how our team has been showing up to support them. So that's just another resource to know about as we go through the day. And we're focusing on gut health today, digestive health. But remember, health begins in the gut. What happens in your tummy affects your entire body, your brain, your entire life. So it's going to be awesome. And I think we're ready to start. Here we go.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is impactful.
The food revolution is transformative.
Compassion.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is life.
The future of medicine.
Long overdue.
It's time.
It's time.
It is time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is our future.
It's power to change the world.
And it's available for everyone.
It's time for a food revolution.
It's time for a food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Now is the time.
I'm John Robbins.
And I'm Ocean Robbins.
And you're watching the 2024 Food Revolution Summit.
In this episode, we're going to focus on gut health, digestion, and how you can achieve a happy and healthy microbiome and a digestive tract that functions beautifully so the food you eat can really support your mental health, your physical health at every stage of your life.
We start with some questions. How does the complex process we call digestion actually happen? How does the food you eat get broken down into its basic constituents and then transported across your gut lining into your bloodstream, where it can then wind up in the cells that then can use it as a source of energy?
Good questions. And do the microorganisms inside you, who make up your microbiome, actually produce substances, including critical vitamins, that your body requires but can't make on its own?
How does your body distinguish between serious infection with a dangerous virus and colonization with a harmless one? How does your immune system know when to rally the troops to defend you and when to ignore benign intruders that don't pose a threat?
Let's start with a look at the basic components of your digestive tract and what they do for you.
The digestive tract is this long superhighway. It's about 30 feet long, if you could lay it all out, and it's got different parts that are all very specialized in what they do. We think about it as three major parts: the upper, the mid, and the lower. So the upper is our esophagus. That's that tube that carries food down to the stomach. So the esophagus and stomach are the upper part, and they're primarily involved in mixing and churning the food to get it ready for absorption. Absorption primarily happens in the mid part of the GI tract, which is the small intestine, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. And that's where the food gets absorbed across the gut lining into our body, where we can use it as an energy source. The lower part of the digestive tract is the colon, and that's where the food gets fermented, and also where liquid gets absorbed back, not nutrients, just liquid, so that you can end up with a nice formed stool. So each part of this digestive tract is really unique and different and special in terms of the types of cells, the enzymes, the different processes happening across the way.
So what does our gut do? Well, it's got a lot of functions, but maybe one of its most important and fundamental functions is it takes the food that we eat, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the legumes, the nuts, the seeds, all that good stuff, breaks it down and turns it into the building blocks of your healthy body. So every day, Ocean, when you wake up in the morning, about 3 ounces of you is brand new. Your body is constantly repairing and building and synthesizing. Where do we get the fuel to build those little blocks every single day? We get them from our food. So on a very basic level, to be able to ingest and digest our food efficiently and comfortably is an essential human trait. So there's that. And then you look at the gut health of the general population in countries like the United States, the UK, Ireland, and any other country that has embraced what we used to call the standard American diet or standard Western diet, which is now becoming the global standard diet. This low fiber, low fruit, low vegetable, high processed food, high junk food, high fat, high animal product diet is a perfect recipe for terrible digestive health. So to eat and digest our food comfortably and efficiently is an essential human trait. But right now you look around, what do you see? About 1 in 5 Americans is troubled on a daily basis by acid reflux, GERD. Acid suppressing medications, one of the most commonly prescribed medications in the United States. A medication that switches off one of your natural digestive processes in order to try and keep a lid on chronic digestive symptoms. We've got diverticular disease affecting perhaps 50% of people age 70, putting people in hospital, costing the US economy billions of dollars every single year. Diseases like fatty liver disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, colorectal cancer affecting 1 in 20 US adults in their lifetime. So this tells us that there's something wrong. There is something wrong.
Bloating, gas, intestinal discomfort, cramping, all of these things are your GI tract trying to communicate with you. Heartburn, going knock, knock, knock. And I always remind people, your body has your back. Your body is trying to prevent you from doing something ruinous to your health.
A lot of people today are suffering from bloating, gas, constipation, bad breath, and other even more serious digestive problems.
And it turns out that one of the most primary and important keys is to feed your beneficial gut bacteria the right kinds of foods so that they have what they need to thrive. And that's where prebiotics come in. Prebiotic fiber is a type of carbohydrate that we can't digest, but that is food for our beneficial gut bacteria who thrive on prebiotic fiber.
Some of the foods that pack the greatest prebiotic punch are dandelion greens, asparagus, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic and leeks and onions, and green leafy veggies, and also legumes like beans. These are all fabulous prebiotic sources.
Prebiotics are the food that feed and nourish the bacteria. Not just any food, but the particular foods, plant foods, fibrous foods, and of course fiber is in plants and not in other products. So these fibrous foods that really encourage the growth of healthy bacteria. And so some of my favorite prebiotic foods, for example, would be onion, leeks, garlic, asparagus. These are all really fantastic. And then, of course, there's some whole grains too that are what we call microbiota accessible carbohydrates, legumes. So I think of beans and greens really as the food that we should be feeding our gut bacteria. So that's the prebiotic.
We need dietary fiber. And I would say that if that could be considered another food group, or at least a macronutrient, I'd be all in. Along with fat, carbohydrates, and protein, I'd love to say dietary fiber because it would raise it to a level of importance where it needs to be. But dietary fiber is by definition carbohydrate, and as such, we can characterize it in that group. But it's fundamental, and it's progressively declining in the Western diet. And that's very, very threatening because it's critical for gut health and for the health and functionality of the various types of bacteria that reside within us, upon whose health and functionality we depend in order to stay healthy from multiple perspectives, including metabolic health, including things like obesity and diabetes, but certainly as it relates to the brain as well. So that's why we need much higher levels of dietary fiber. It's been estimated that our hunter-gatherer forebears may have consumed as much as 100 grams of dietary fiber on a daily basis. We now, hope that people might get 20 grams of fiber in their diet. So we've got to do our very best through our choices to increase the consumption of dietary fiber. Primarily, dietary fiber comes from fruits and vegetables. When I say primarily, I should have used the word exclusively. There is no dietary fiber in any animal-based product whatsoever.
There's no fiber in any animal product. And there's also very little, if any, in the ultra-processed foods that are so very common today. And this is important for many reasons. The lack of fiber in our diet results not just in fewer types of microbes, which would be bad enough, but also in a decrease in the beneficial byproducts that our gut bacteria produce when they metabolize our food. If you're going to have a healthy microbiome, if you're going to have a flourishing and diverse collection of beneficial bacteria in your digestive tract and elsewhere in your body, clearly one of the central keys is to eat more plant fiber.
The USDA recommends that adults get at least 28 grams of fiber every day. But that's actually only a bare minimum. It's not nearly enough for optimal health. But only 5% of Americans get even that much. This is really sad because we know that people who eat plenty of fiber have a lower risk of all kinds of diseases, including heart disease and type 2 diabetes.
If you're consuming enough dietary fiber, then your gut will be healthier because your microbiome will be home to trillions of microbes that will help you digest and metabolize what you eat. And they will protect you against diseases, and they will train your immune system to recognize and to reject pathogens. And one of the surprising things about your microbiome is how swiftly responsive it can be to what you eat.
It's true. There was a study conducted at the National University of Singapore which found that eating kiwi fruit increased the presence of beneficial bacteria in people's microbiomes by 35% in, get this, just 24 hours.
The composition of your gut bacteria will vary greatly depending on what you eat and is highly and immediately responsive, often within a matter of hours after eating.
I'm sure a lot of people who are watching right now are wondering, how can I modify my microbiome to reduce disease risks and optimize health? Let's find out.
It's awesome to include like chicory root and asparagus and inulin-rich foods, but really what it's about the whole dietary pattern. I wouldn't want people to focus on one individual plant in order to improve their gut microbiome, because what we know the secret when it comes to eating plants to improve your gut microbiome isn't one specific plant, it's the variety of plants. So a few years ago, the American Gut Project analyzed the gut microbiomes of 11,000 citizen scientists, predominantly from the US, also from the UK, Australia, and a few other countries. And they looked at their diet, their lifestyle, their medications, their physical exercise, etc. And then they looked at the health of their gut microbiome. And what they discovered was that the number one dietary predictor of a healthy, diverse, functional, robust gut microbiome was the diversity of plants in your diet. Variety. But as you know, if you're eating a varied, healthy, plant-based diet, you are achieving a plant diversity and a gut microbial diversity that's becoming increasingly rare in countries that have embraced the standard American global standard diet. And that's part of the reason why vegans are 80% less likely to get diverticular disease, substantially less likely to get problems with gallstones, substantially less likely to get fatty liver disease, why plant-based diets offer substantial protection against colorectal cancer and various other cancers of the digestive system. So it's about the variety. That's the key message.
It bears repeating how important it is to eat a variety of whole plant foods. You want the whole orchestra playing. Dr. Desmond referred to the American Gut Project, which is the largest human microbiome study ever undertaken, and it involved people from 45 different countries. And this enormous study found the number of plant types in people's diets to be the primary factor in determining the health and diversity of people's gut microbiome. And in this study, the people who ate more than 30 different types of plants per week had gut microbiomes that were far healthier than those who ate 10 or fewer types of plants per week. It's crystal clear that the diversity and the number of plants you eat will determine the diversity and the number of bacteria that can grow in your gut.
This is true because each type of plant provides its own unique type of fiber. Even plants that are very similar, like cauliflower and broccoli or kale and collard greens, are distinguished by their different kinds of fiber. As a result, we need many, many different kinds of fiber in order to feed the great diversity of microbes that we need to be optimally healthy.
I sometimes think we might be better off if, instead of counting how many grams of fiber we're consuming or how much protein or how many calories, we focused instead on counting the number of different plant foods that we eat in a day, because that turns out to be key to having a thriving microbiome.
The microbiome is the gut bacteria that live in our colons. In fact, so far that we've discovered, the human colon is the most biodense environment on planet Earth. Nowhere are there more bacteria, there's more life per unit centimeter than the human gut. It's amazing. Nowhere else in the animal kingdom, nowhere else on planet Earth have we found more life concentrated. And the question is like, well, what's it all doing down there? And, it's kind of a black box, right? And we didn't really know because many of those bacteria are unculturable outside the human body. And so you didn't even know what was in there until we had these genetic fingerprinting techniques, which technologically allowed us to be like, oh, look at the DNA and say, oh, there's this bacteria, there's this, and we found thousands of bacteria. And then we can start, okay, now, are some bacteria more associated with one health condition, another health condition, another disease condition? And then, instead of just that correlation, we can actually prove cause and effect with these so-called fecal transplant studies, where you can actually kind of swap microbiomes between people and actually show that you can transfer disease characteristics just based on what's happening in the gut.
Sounds like a crappy study.
It is indeed a crappy study.
Fecal transplants may sound gross, but they are in fact legitimate medical procedures in which feces are taken from a healthy donor and then introduced into a recipient patient's GI tract. This procedure can actually control a serious infection called C. difficile by adding healthy bacteria into the recipient's intestines.
And there is now also the possibility that fecal transplants might be helpful in treating other conditions, including inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, obesity, liver disease, neurocognitive disorders, and more.
One study found a particular bacterial strain in the microbiomes of marathon runners. And when that bacteria was implanted into the microbiomes of mice, the mice could run faster and longer.
That's amazing. So is this something we should consider implementing more widely?
Well, first of all, when we're talking about fecal transplants, and you used the phrase a moment ago, say, this is a little bit icky for some, but let me just reassure your viewers, everybody poops, okay? To eat and to digest food is a basic human trait. Everybody chews, everybody swallows, everybody burps, everybody farts, everybody poops. So if we could get comfortable with that, it would save me a lot of time at my clinic. And also it would help a lot of people because people are so embarrassed to talk about their basic digestive functions that often they don't seek help. And if something is going wrong, they don't want to mention it to their family members. They don't even want to mention it to their doctor. So look, everybody poops. Get comfortable with it. The science on fecal microbial transplants is getting more and more interesting. So what are we doing? We know that the gut microbiome is a control center for human biology. We know that healthy people have a healthy gut microbiome in certain circumstances. We know that in certain diseases, we have an unhealthy gut microbiome, a dysbiosis. So can we take poop from a healthy person and transplant it into an unhealthy person and therefore make the unhealthy person healthy? Well, the science is emerging that suggests maybe we can. And certainly for treating gastrointestinal infections like C. difficile, it is now a licensed treatment for C. difficile because you help to restore the healthy gut microbial balance just long enough that your body can take care of this unpleasant infection. And there is emerging science in conditions like ulcerative colitis, also in coronary vascular disease and metabolic syndrome. But I got to tell you, the benefits that those studies show are generally temporary. Why? Because in most of those research studies, they are just giving a fecal microbial transplant. You have got to get to the root cause. A healthy plant-predominant diet, a varied diet, good sleep, exercise, time in nature, time with other people. Those are really the secrets to developing a healthy gut microbiome. So it's not that I'm like totally against all of the gut microbial transplant literature. It's fascinating. And I think ultimately we are going to get there. But if in 5 years' time we have FMT programs available at every major hospital in the US, and it isn't coupled with a gut microbiome, healthy diet and lifestyle program, I'll be really disappointed.
Yeah, it's like it gets things started,
correct,
but then just the bacteria will starve to death if we don't feed them.
Yeah, it's got to be the whole package. And to be honest, the benefits we've seen thus far in human studies, outside of a few niche conditions like C. diff infection, maybe ulcerative colitis, we need a lot more data before we start recommending this.
So it's not a real problem of getting the intestinal difficulties solved by giving the right kind of bacteria. The problem is solved by putting the right food in the intestine and the bacteria will come and live there. There's a population of people, and these are your rural Africans. A lot of my work is based upon studies of these people back 50, 60, 70 years ago, when heart disease was unknown. No breast cancer, no colon cancer, no hemorrhoids, no deep vein thrombosis, no gallbladder disease, no heart attacks. And what people are studying there is they're studying the poop of rural Africans with the idea that somehow they're going to make a pill that has African poop in it and sell it to people. No, what you need to do is you need to eat what the rural Africans ate. And then, well, you might want to add some bacteria, but you only have to do it once because if you feed them, they're going to stick around. And you get the right food, which is starches, vegetables, and fruits in the intestinal tract, and the problems will be solved.
We hear a lot about probiotic supplements for gut health, but it turns out that while it's fine to introduce a beneficial bacteria into your system, if you aren't eating in a way that feeds and nourishes these beneficial bacteria, they'll just die out rapidly and won't do you any good.
That's probiotics. We've also spoken about prebiotics and the foods that pack the greatest prebiotic punch, like dandelion greens, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, leeks, jicama, and onions. Prebiotic foods are important because they contain high amounts of a particular kind of fiber that supports beneficial gut microbes.
And as important as prebiotics and probiotics are, there is another class of microbe-related compounds that may be even more important, and those are called postbiotics. But unlike prebiotics and probiotics, postbiotics are not substances you can ingest. They are tremendously significant substances that are produced by the beneficial bacteria in your gut.
A postbiotic refers to the products that the bacteria are making. Sometimes they're referred to as bacterial metabolic products or bacterial metabolites, but those refer to these chemical substances that the bacteria are producing when they are fermenting this fibrous food. And a classic postbiotic are short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids are essential, not just for the health of the gut, but for the health of our immune system. So sometimes with patients, I really think hard, how can I make this sound more scientific and complicated and sexier than eat more plants? But that is ultimately what it boils down to in terms of what's really keeping the gut healthy, what's modulating the immune system, what's creating a healthy microbiome.
We eat healthy foods containing fiber-resistant starch, these so-called prebiotics. We feed these healthy bugs that then, in exchange for having this nice place to eat with all this wonderful food coming down, they produce these so-called postbiotics, which is the production of the metabolism of these bacteria, fed prebiotics, and some of these postbiotics, like short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, are then absorbed back through the colon wall into our bloodstream, circulate throughout our body, cross the blood-brain barrier, and can have effects throughout the body, beneficial effects throughout the body. And so the microbiome helps explain why a healthy plant-based diet can affect so many different organ systems at the same time.
As a gastroenterologist, I'm very aware of the impact that dietary change can have on our digestive health. And it's very, very true that a healthy, varied, plant-based diet is the perfect recipe for excellent digestive health. And a lot of what I do is helping people to move more towards a plant-based diet or even an exclusively plant-based diet. And what they discover is that this is a great, healthy way to eat for their gut health. And when you see those transformations happening in front of you at your clinic, I mean, our medications can do so much. But when you look at the dietary changes, the results you start seeing in your patients, the transformations in gut health.
I mean, you can imagine, gut health, presumably the microbiome has something to do with gut health, and they absolutely do. But what was so surprising, I think, to people is that the microbiome also determined, how bad your asthma was, your immune system, your pneumonia rates, your mental health. And it turns out that there's this communication between our microbiome and the rest of our body.
90% of your immune system is in your digestive tract. Now, why is that? Your digestive tract is one of your largest environmental exposures. Your gut covers a surface area, perhaps about, the science varies on this, but probably about half the size of a tennis court. Okay, that's the whole surface area of your gut. And for a large part of that surface area, there is one layer of human cells and a thin layer of mucin, this little clear viscous fluid, separating the contents of your gut, which is what you choose to put in there, from your bloodstream, from your heart, from your lungs, from your eyes. So it's got to have an incredibly robust immune system, which knows how to deal with, pathogenic bacteria and other products that may enter your digestive system. So by fostering a healthy gut microbiome and having a healthy diet, you're doing a whole lot to benefit your immune system. We also saw research a few months into the pandemic showing that individuals, and I'm sure you saw this research, okay? It was on frontline health professionals, I guess people like me who were working on COVID-19 wards as physicians during that first wave when we didn't know anything about how to treat this disease, and we had our personal protective equipment, etc. But still, during that first wave, about 20% of health professionals contracted COVID-19. But there was data published just maybe 6 months into the pandemic that showed us that frontline health physicians who described their diet as vegan or whole food plant-based, who contracted COVID-19, were 78% less likely to have a severe disease course. Whereas individuals who described their dietary pattern as low carb were 3 times more likely to have a severe disease course when they contracted COVID-19. And I think that was a very real demonstration of how your diet impacts on your gut health, impacts on the robustness of your immune system.
And so food becomes important. All these vitamins become so important. Things like zinc become really important to offset some of those coughs and colds and things like that. And you can get that through a supplement or through food. But all really to say that we want the strongest immunity. And here's a great tip, things like red bell peppers and kiwi fruit have some of the highest levels of vitamin C.
Right.
So, get it from your citrus fruit and things like that, but get it from all of these other plant fruits.
Most people don't know there's actually more C in peppers than there is in oranges.
That's correct.
Many people have heard about the perils of a leaky gut, where the protective junctions in the intestinal lining become compromised. When this happens, undigested food particles leak into the bloodstream where they elicit an immune response, often leading to systemic inflammation. When your intestinal barrier is compromised, you become susceptible to a spectrum of health challenges.
It always amazes me that the lining of our guts, that which separates what's inside our digestive tract and what's inside the rest of our body, is, as Dr. Desmond mentioned a moment ago, just a single cell thick.
Yes, that really is amazing. And it's one of the reasons why leaky gut syndrome has become so common. When we don't eat the right food, we're prone to it. And certain medications also increase the prevalence of this problem. Dr. Desmond also mentioned a study of doctors and nurses who were treating people with COVID-19 who developed COVID-19. In that study, those health professionals who were eating a whole foods plant-based diet were nearly 80% less likely to have a severe disease course. And at the same time, those health professionals who were eating a low-carb diet were 3 times more likely to have a severe disease course.
Why would that be?
Well, microbiologists have analyzed the connection between a person's gut health and their prognosis in viral illnesses. And they have found that a leaky gut worsens the severity of infection by allowing the virus access to our blood vessels, our livers, kidneys, and hearts through our compromised digestive tracts.
So what causes a leaky gut? And what can someone who has a leaky gut do to repair it?
Leaky gut refers to an increase in intestinal permeability. So if we think back to that gut lining, the selective lining, it's like a fishing net with tiny holes. And sometimes that fishing net can get damaged and the holes can get big. And now things can pass through the net that normally couldn't before. So what damages that net? There are a couple big categories. And again, many of them involve the medicine cabinet. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, drugs containing ibuprofen, so that's Motrin, Advil, Anacin, Aleve. Those drugs are probably number 1 on the list for increasing intestinal permeability. And while this is happening on a microscopic level, I see it on a macroscopic level when I'm doing an endoscopy on somebody and I see an ulcer. That's what an ulcer is. It's a big hole in your intestinal lining. But many people who take these drugs have tiny little holes that are either microscopic or just small little erosions that aren't as clinically significant as an ulcer. Antibiotics are problematic, steroids. You can have damage from radiation in people who have been treated with radiation. Alcohol is another huge one that can damage that gut lining and increase the permeability. Stress. There have been studies showing that stress increases intestinal permeability. In fact, excessive exercise does too, but just temporarily. So if we take somebody like a marathon runner, we see that typically before the race, the intestinal permeability is different from after, but that's just a temporary physiological state. And of course, food. So highly processed diet, artificial sweeteners, these are all things we know that emulsifiers in food, a lot of the things like the soy lecithin and the gums and so on, the carrageenan that are used in food to create a certain consistency and a certain mouthfeel are damaging to the gut lining. And we do have evidence for some of these substances that this damage to the gut lining can be associated with certain autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease, one of the ones that I treat in the gut. So yes, an increase in intestinal permeability is real. What is more controversial is this idea that leaky gut, which has become a popular way of describing an increase in intestinal permeability, is this idea that a leaky gut is responsible for all these different things, for brain fog and fatigue and weight gain and autoimmune disease and so on. And again, this tendency to draw a straight line. And what we find is that there is often a commercial interest here. Somebody creates a test that may be reliable or not to measure something and then says, if this thing is abnormal, you have this condition, and here are several $100s worth of supplements. So I see a lot of that. And if you do indeed have a clinically significant increase in intestinal permeability, the key is to look at what created that problem and to stop it. So to remove the food, the practice, or the medication that is damaging your gut lining. It's not to take a pill and think that this pill is going to somehow repair your gut. It's almost always to look at why. Why did this develop? Am I taking too much Advil? Am I drinking too much alcohol? And am I eating too many ultra-processed foods? Am I not managing the stress in my life and my gut is kind of freaking out?
What about bone broth? Some people use bone broth thinking it's going to help sort of line that gut lining. Is it helpful?
I recommend broth to my patients, but I recommend a broth made from plants that are high in inulin, in this fiber that we know is very restorative to the gut bacteria. It's a very simple broth. You chop up leeks, onion, and garlic. You can throw in some scallion if you like. I'm Jamaican, so I use pepper too, habanero pepper. But the basic thing is leek, onion, garlics. You saute them, a little olive oil, whatever you like, and then you blend them up with some water. And I have found this to be incredibly restorative for my patients with severe inflammation from autoimmune disease, with Crohn's, with ulcerative colitis. Often the gut is in a state where it can't handle a big leafy salad. And for the patients who are really sick, when they blend it up, I have them strain it so that there's less fiber in it if their gut is really inflamed. But I have found that that can be really helpful. So much of the time, it's just the idea of liquids that are helpful. And I don't think there's anything magical about a bone broth. I mean, people talk about collagen and the collagen in the bones and so on, but I think often just liquids in the GI tract are helpful because they allow the digestive tract to rest a little bit from that very, very labor-intensive process of digestion. And I do recommend, again, these leek, onion, garlic, high in inulin, high in resistant starch, that is really feeding those microbes in the colon.
Our culture rightly recognizes that some bacteria can cause disease. But there is also now a compelling body of evidence that has become utterly convincing that the trillions of microbes that call our bodies home are primarily helping rather than hindering us. In fact, most of them have functions and perform services that are critical to our health and survival.
Without our microbes, our immune systems wouldn't be able to protect us from infections or cancer. Our heart, lungs, and liver wouldn't function properly. We wouldn't be able to digest food, absorb nutrients, or synthesize vitamins and growth factors that our bodies just cannot make on their own. And our mental health would suffer because we'd lack the critical neurotransmitters that microbes produce.
And yet, even as dependent on a healthy and diverse microbiome as we are, many of us are eating foods that feed unhealthy bacteria rather than the beneficial ones. For example, the more eggs, liver, beef, and pork someone eats, the more of a toxic substance called TMAO will be found in their blood and in their urine. In fact, if you eat these animal products, you'll get a bump in TMAO levels within hours. And this is important because elevated levels of TMAO are strongly associated with many serious medical concerns.
People with higher levels of TMAO in their blood have more than twice the risk of heart attack, stroke, and other serious cardiovascular problems. And TMAO levels are higher in people with cognitive impairments and in people with dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. In fact, elevated TMAO has been linked with everything from type 2 diabetes to dementia to arthritis to kidney disease to even polycystic ovary syndrome.
So you really do not want to have elevated TMAO if you can help it.
Yeah.
And you can help it.
You can. The good news is that people who eat a plant-based diet produce very little TMAO. In fact, when researchers at the Cleveland Clinic fed steak to vegans, they found almost no increase in their TMAO levels.
Now, this is really remarkable. When people for whom meat is a regular part of their diet consume animal products, and particularly those that are high in choline, like liver and egg yolks and red meat, their TMAO levels tend to rise dramatically. But when vegans eat these very same foods, their TMAO levels do not elevate at all. Why would that be?
Well, it's because the diets of vegans do not foster the growth of the specific gut bacteria that produce TMAO, while the diets of meat eaters do exactly that. The reason you can feed liver or egg yolks or red meat to vegans and their TMAO levels will not rise is that a vegan diet doesn't feed the microorganisms that make TMAO.
I don't want to pummel our viewers with statistics and studies, but some of this research strikes me as really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of another study that looked at the differing effects of animal and vegetable proteins on the gut microbiota in overweight and obese people. We're sometimes told that animal protein is superior, but these researchers found that a higher intake of animal protein leads to a decrease in beneficial gut bacteria and an increase in the harmful microbes that are characteristic of obesity.
The health-giving properties of the microbiome of a person eating a whole foods plant-based diet is so favorable that there are now physicians who are recommending that people with elevated TMAO or with obesity or who have a certain kind of range of intestinal problems get a fecal transplant from a vegan.
Well, that might help, though not for long if the recipient of the transplant resumed eating the standard American diet.
So if you choose today to eat kind of, let's go for the extreme, okay? The kind of standard American, we've got a beef burger, we've got a white processed bun, we've got no fruits, we've got no vegetables, we've got no whole grains. So we're eating a low fiber, processed, meaty, fatty dish. Cheeseburger and fries. Okay, so we eat that food. The human body is incredible. The digestive system is incredibly adaptive. Your human digestive system is going to work on that meal and get every bit of nourishment it can get out of it. So the proteins, the fats, the carbohydrates that your body needs, your body will find a way to get that nutrition out of even an unhealthy meal. But what you're then left with in your bowel is the residue. And that residue travels down through your small intestine, where all the absorption occurs, and is delivered to your large bowel, the colon, the home of the gut microbiome. That residue from that meal now becomes food for the microbes in your gut. And what you're feeding your gut microbes determines which microbes will flourish and become predominant within your gut microbiome. Unfortunately, if you've chosen to eat that high meat, low fiber, plant deficient, processed grains meal, what you are feeding your gut microbes is residual animal protein, bile, no fiber. A recipe that encourages unhealthy bacteria to flourish. So you get bacteria that flourish in a high bile environment, bilophilic bacteria, which produce secondary bile acids, which are carcinogenic. You get the bacteria that flourish on carnitine from red meat, which produce trimethylamine, which enters your bloodstream, gets converted to TMAO, a pro-inflammatory molecule. You get a deficiency in the production of short-chain fatty acids, which are incredibly beneficial substances that your body needs to thrive. Okay, so the next day, you've seen this video or you've tuned into some of your awesome content, and instead of having the Big Mac meal and fries, you decide you're going to have a dish that's built with fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes and quinoa and all that good stuff, the foods that humans have been thriving on for millennia. Okay, so what happens? You eat the food. Once again, your digestive system goes to work. You digest that food, you extract the protein, the carbohydrates, the fats, and of course you're getting all the great phytochemicals and antioxidants and, you know, all those incredible benefits that we get from our plant-based food, okay? You're getting the vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, the antioxidants, all that good stuff. But there's still a residue. So there is a residue that is now delivered to your large bowel after that meal, and that residue, again, becomes food for your microbes. But now the residue is completely different because we don't have residual animal protein. We've got a variety of fiber, a variety of microbiome available carbohydrates. We don't have all the bile that was needed to digest that high-fat meal. We've got polyphenols from all of the berries and fruits that we're eating. So now we're choosing to feed different microbes. We are feeding beneficial microbes that produce short-chain fatty acids and vitamins. You got your butyrate and your acetate and your propionate. And it has a very real and measurable impact on your gut health, promoting healthy cell metabolism, DNA repair, anti-carcinogenesis. You're creating a gut microbial environment that is conducive to good gut health and good overall health. And more than that, you're creating those changes very, very quickly. Even within hours of consuming that meal, we can measure beneficial changes in your gut microbiome. Within 28 days, we're seeing changes in the structure and function of your gut microbiome. We see the beneficial short-chain fatty acids going way up. We see the harmful secondary bile acids going way down. We can measure something called the gut mucosal proliferation rate, which is a measure of how quickly your gut is having to repair itself. We see that rate going down because your gut isn't having to do so much repair work. It can happen within 28 days. So just imagine the benefits you can get in 28 weeks, 28 months, 28 years. It's just absolutely fascinating.
There are so many benefits and advantages to eating for a healthy microbiome. One that isn't talked about as much as perhaps it should be is the effect that our diets have on the smell of our breath.
It's true. And in fact, no less of an authority on breath than the Colgate toothpaste company has published a remarkable article on their website titled "Why Vegetarians Don't Have to Worry About Bad Breath." The article informs us, and I quote, "Bad breath, or halitosis, is a problem that affects 40% of the adult population at some time in their lives. Poor oral hygiene, gum disease, and smoking all contribute to bad breath, but your diet also plays an important role. Following a vegetarian diet or reducing your meat intake will help prevent those unpleasant odors."
That's really from the Colgate toothpaste company?
Yes, it really is. And it turns out there's some science to back up what they're saying.
The reason people have horrible halitosis is because of the food that they eat. It's caused by eating animal foods. And let me tell you the basics on this. When we eat animal foods, we're eating foods that are high in sulfur. Animal foods have a high content sulfur-containing amino acids like methionine and cysteine. These break down into sulfuric acid, which is a very potent acid. They also break down into hydrogen sulfide, which stinks. That's rotten eggs. That's the pits, sulfur pits at Yosemite. It's a repulsive smell, is sulfur. Again, rotten eggs. So animal protein has a high content of sulfur, which smells. This sulfur goes into the small intestine. It's absorbed into the bloodstream. That stink then comes out of the skin and causes body odor. That stink comes out of the breath. It's not just the animal food in your mouth. It's the fact that the venous blood returns to the lungs and you exhale this sulfur. So even if you brush your teeth really carefully or take, a whole bunch of mouthwashes, you're not going to stop the stink because it's coming from deep inside.
We keep hearing to eat more plants and less or no meat and eat more fiber. But some people who eat more fiber, and particularly fiber from beans, can develop gas and bloating and other forms of discomfort. What is going on that could cause this? What is happening in these people's microbiomes? And is there something they can do about it?
So what your good bacteria are doing are they're fermenting the fiber. They're eating the fiber and churning out these beneficial byproducts. And if you think of other kind of fermentation processes, the gas is, if you're fermenting beer, the presence of little bubbles, it shows it's working. That's what fermentation is, producing this gas. We will say, wait a second though, what about bloating, right? What about passing gas? Well, what happens is you feed the gas-producing bacteria, and the presence of gas in your colon fosters the growth of gas-eating bacteria. So there's bacteria that actually consume the gas and can produce these postbiotics with it. And so right at the beginning, if all of a sudden you go from, milkshakes and cheeseburgers with basically no fiber, all of a sudden to a really healthy diet, so you feed these bacteria and they're like, woohoo, fermentation, go crazy. They make all this gas, but you have yet to develop the other good bugs that eat the gas. And so this transition period where you have excess gas, And so it's critically important. You just got to wait it out, and you have to have to get that balance of good bacteria. And so the gas producers and the gas consumers are back up at the same level, and then those problems go away. And you can show this. You give people beans, and then versus a control. There's a number of different studies. One was carrots. You can show it's actually a minority of people that actually experience problems with gas, and for the small percentage that do, within 2 weeks, it goes away in almost everybody. So you just got to really stick with it. And if it really is a problem, look, you can go slow. You used to be like, I'm going to add a teaspoon of chickpeas to my daily diet. And I'm put on salt, put it whatever. Okay, so then let's move on to. And there's some legumes that are a little more or less gas producing than others, but the critically thing, you have to stick with it. And actually, so the gas is showing, look, it's working. Right? It's just a matter of getting over that hump until you can kind of balance out your microbiome.
Beans are fabulous sources of protein and fiber and a host of other critical nutrients. But they also contain raffinose, which can cause gas and bloating. One thing that can help you get over that hump is to soak your uncooked beans for 24 to 48 hours, rinsing them several times a day and changing the water each time before cooking the beans. Doing that removes most of the raffinose and leads to less gas and less bloating.
If you've ever been to a gastroenterologist or complained to your primary care doctor about any sort of heartburn, indigestion, or abdominal discomfort, there's a good chance you were given a prescription for an acid-blocking medication or told to buy an over-the-counter version of one. These acid blockers, also called proton pump inhibitors, have been mass marketed to the public in ads that show people comfortably gobbling a late-night cheeseburger or chowing down an entire pepperoni pizza without the slightest complaint from their digestive tract.
These drugs are among the most commonly used drugs in the world, but studies suggest that as many as 70% of the people taking them get no benefit whatsoever. And for those who take these drugs long-term, the side effects can be serious or even deadly. Proton pump inhibitor side effects include kidney problems, bone fractures, and heart attacks, and many other severe problems. There are today thousands of lawsuits over proton pump inhibitors.
In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, a large national health survey involving over 53,000 patients found that people taking a proton pump inhibitor once a day had double the risk of testing positive for COVID-19. People taking one of these medications twice a day had almost quadruple the risk of becoming infected. And not only were people taking these drugs much more likely to test positive, they were also much more likely to have severe outcome.
So these drugs are lucrative for the drug companies, but they can damage people. Is there a better way to deal with common GI tract symptoms like gas and bloating and cramping and digestive distress?
So when it comes to the GI tract, these signs, the gas, the bloating, the cramping, the digestive distress, is our GI tract trying to tell us something? And the goal is to figure out what it's trying to tell you. In the case of something like heartburn, which we know is not related to overproduction of acid at all, but is caused by that sphincter, that valve, that muscular structure between the esophagus and stomach that opens when the food is coming down and then closes after. So heartburn is caused by that valve inappropriately opening. Why? Because we've eaten too large a meal and our stomach can't handle the capacity, because we've eaten a high-fat meal and that slowed down the stomach emptying and now the valve is popping open, because of alcohol or caffeine or chocolate or all these things that act on the sphincter. But instead, we say, oh, too much acid. Here's a pill, block the stomach acid. The downstream effects of that, of potent acid suppressors like proton pump inhibitors, is that now you have no stomach acid. You can't digest food properly without stomach acid. It messes up the gradient of the microbiome. You can't protect yourself from pathogens that get in through the mouth without stomach acid. There is a 33% increased risk of dementia in people taking these drugs long-term because it causes a problem with that gut-brain communication. So rather than take a drug that is very effective, and yes, sometimes there is a clear indication for these drugs. You have an ulcer that's not healing, etc. But most of the time, these are symptoms that are caused by diet and lifestyle. And rather than addressing them, we're treating them with pharmaceuticals. So if we think about these symptoms, there's some general categories. You might be eating late at night. The GI tract has a bedtime. It's most active early in the morning when the sun rises and least active once the sun sets. So if you are now consuming the majority of your calories after dark, you're setting yourself up for bloating and discomfort because your GI tract is asleep and you're asking it to digest food. How much you're eating. If you're eating a large amount of food, again, you might be creating a problem because it's just too much food to digest in one sitting. And we know, again, the content, the macronutrient content, high fat foods require much more time to be broken down and digested than a simple carbohydrate. And so typically when a high fat food hits the stomach, there's a chemical message that is sent to a part of the stomach called a gastric pacemaker. And that slows down the rate of contraction of the stomach. And that slowed rate of contraction means you feel full and uncomfortable longer because it's taking longer for the food to get down. So it's important to think about the medicine cabinet, the food, not just what we're eating, but when and how much. And then, of course, to think about our lifestyle. Are we really sedentary? Our GI tract is a muscular organ. And like our biceps or triceps or hamstrings, it requires movement for it to function properly. So if we are not moving, typically neither are our bowels. We're going to have a lot of stasis in the GI tract. Things are not going to be moving at an appropriate pace from north to south, and we're going to end up bloated and uncomfortable and gassy because not only are the products of digestion moving slowly, but the gas that's being produced as a normal byproduct is now moving slowly and building up. So it's important to think about lifestyle with things like how we're moving. Stress is another huge one. When we are in a state of stress, in this fight or flight state, this is typically when blood is diverted to our brain and to our large organs, large muscles like the hamstrings and so on, so we can run away from the danger. And a lot of that blood flow and those resources are diverted away from the digestive tract. So digestion can come to a relative standstill. And so we have to think about how we're managing our stress throughout the day and what does that mean for our digestion. And there are lots of other factors too. So I encourage people to be a medical detective. And it's the basis for all the educational work I do with the books, et cetera, is to say, what is your GI tract trying to tell you, and what can you do to solve this problem?
While a variety of dietary interventions can provide relief for different people, a common dietary recommendation for people suffering from intestinal distress is what's called a low FODMAP diet. What is a FODMAP?
Well, FODMAP is an acronym that refers to foods that are high in a particular type of carbohydrate that can be difficult for some people to absorb. When you eat the foods that are considered to be FODMAPs, those foods may not be as well digested by the time they reach your small intestine as other types of carbohydrates. While this is not a problem for most people, it can cause symptoms for those with especially sensitive digestive tracts.
Now, the problem here is that FODMAPs are found in a lot of foods that you might be used to eating regularly and that are actually highly nutritious and are actually really good for your microbiome, like garlic and onions, apples, and legumes. The initial restriction phase of a low FODMAP diet completely eliminates these foods.
Now, generally, people who follow a low FODMAP diet do so for at least 3 or 4 weeks, which is usually long enough to figure out if removing the entire class of foods helps them to feel better. The idea is that if a person has seen improvement in their symptoms, they can then carefully start reintroducing FODMAP-containing foods one at a time to see which ones trigger their symptoms.
One of the reasons that the restriction phase of the low FODMAP diet should be temporary if possible is that it can eliminate a lot of the healthiest foods on the planet. Some people on a low FODMAP diet make the mistake of eating a lot of meat and low FODMAP dairy products, which have been shown to contribute to inflammation. So this can in turn fuel many serious health conditions and diseases and even create additional intestinal distress. And of course, if your intestines are inflamed, it's going to be very hard to successfully reintroduce FODMAP-containing foods.
So what's interesting about the FODMAPs, it should be more of a process than a diet. And it was really designed to kind of take people back to a place where they could rebuild their gut, their microbiome, and then we slowly begin adding foods in on the FODMAP, with the exception of the D, which is disaccharide, which is dairy. But what's happened is it's become kind of a crutch for an unhealthy diet. People are eating this Western diet and they have disrupted microbiomes and irritable bowel syndrome and they're not feeling well. And so obviously when you take some of these fibers out of their diet, the FODMAP foods, you take those out, they're left with eating more unhealthy, low fiber foods, and they feel better because they've had a disrupted microbiome. And then they add back in, beans or broccoli or some of these foods that have fiber, and they feel bad again. And so it just reinforces the idea that I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, they have disrupted microbiome and an unhealthy gastrointestinal system that can be healed through the right intervention, and that it will get better, and that diet is the solution, not just either staying on a FODMAP diet, which is difficult and not healthy long-term, and not going back to the regular diet. And so, it's stepping back, and sometimes we have to pull back on a lot of those foods and begin just slowly feeding things that the microbiome can begin to process. It's sometimes a smoothie because it's processed can help. Steamed vegetables can be helpful. Sometimes it's starting with juicing and allowing that microbiome to begin healing. Some foods like sweet potatoes and mangoes and some of these other lower FODMAP foods can be wonderful ways to begin rebuilding the microbiome and exposing it to some fiber without causing that disruption. And the nice thing about adding some of these kinds of healthy foods, they taste good, and it reinforces these are healthy foods, they didn't irritate my stomach, and I'm going to keep going. And they actually start to feel better in the process. And over the course of several months, they'll rebuild that microbiome population. We can begin adding small amounts of some of these others. Maybe it's lentils before we do beans, well cooked, and they process those, they feel good. And so we can start rebuilding that beautiful garden that will handle some of the healthier foods down the line.
The market worldwide for probiotic supplements for gastrointestinal health is huge, and it's growing rapidly. But there is a problem. Most of these products contain only a few strains of microorganisms. They often have vast amounts of the species they provide, but still, they provide only a very limited number of species, while there are tens of thousands of different species of bacteria that make up our microbiomes. As well, just swallowing a pill containing zillions of a particular beneficial bacteria does not guarantee that those microbes will take up residence and flourish in a person's microbiome.
The probiotic industry, of course, makes extravagant claims for the benefits their lucrative products provide. But how valid are those claims?
Probiotics refer to the bacteria themselves, whether the live ones that are already in our gastrointestinal tract or the ones that we're taking from the shelf. But what I want to remind people is that definition of a probiotic, when we think about a product, the full definition is live bacteria that when ingested confer a benefit to the host, to us. And it's that second part of the definition, the confer a benefit, where sometimes things go a bit awry. So just taking a product off the shelf that says it has live bacteria and ingesting it is most of the time not conferring any benefit at all. So that's something for people to keep in mind.
Oh, so I get asked about probiotics and fermented foods all the time. They're two separate issues, okay? So probiotics are a pharmaceutical product. They're pills, powders, potions. They're also big business. So the probiotic industry is worth maybe $60 billion a year. My approach to probiotics is that you don't need them. You just don't need them. There's a lot of health claims around probiotics. I've yet to see a paper that convinces me that adding a probiotic to your diet can even come close to the gut microbiome benefits of making a healthy shift to your diet. We spoke earlier in this interview about the dramatic changes you can see in your gut microbiome within even hours of making a switch to a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet, and how those benefits build within 28 days. And we see dramatic changes. The changes that we see with probiotic supplementation are really difficult to measure. So I don't generally recommend them. And that makes sense, right? I mean, humans and the gut microbiome have been hanging around together since the dawn of human evolution. Our gut microbiome is ancient. It's an integral part of being a human. When you were born, Ocean, for that first moment of life, the microbes in the environment began to inhabit your digestive tract. That first human touch, that first sip of milk, that first breath of fresh air, your gut microbiome begins to develop. Your gut microbiome is an integral part to developing a healthy GI tract as a little growing baby. Your mother's milk contains specific carbohydrates which were not there for you, but were there to feed your gut microbiome. Really important, okay? And then as we go through adult life, our gut microbiome remains incredibly important, an incredibly important and versatile player in our health. So that's how humans have evolved. But somehow, in the last 10 to 15 years, the probiotic industry has sought to convince us that in order to have a healthy gut microbiome, we need to buy their products and consume them every day. And they can be pretty expensive.
So we have very little data that a probiotic in the average person is going to lead to any changes in the gut microbiome. So I'm going to start off with that. Very little data. We have specific instances and conditions that are fairly rare. So a condition, for example, called necrotizing enterocolitis that we typically see in infants where there's severe inflammation in the GI tract. And again, this can be a condition that can be fatal. We have some good evidence there for probiotics. We have some evidence for traveler's diarrhea for probiotics and some other areas. But we don't have evidence that the average person taking a probiotic is better off. Just as we don't have compelling evidence that the average person taking a multivitamin is better off, but we do know for certain nutrient deficiencies, if you have low iron, if you have low vitamin D, if you have low B12, these are situations where replenishing these vitamins and minerals, etc., can be really helpful. So it's a little bit similar here. And again, it's really difficult to get these bacteria taking up residence in the GI tract and reproducing in a way that's changing the microbiome. That is a continuous change. I mean, we can change it for a day or two, but to get continuous change, we need ongoing reproduction. And for that, we need to feed the microbes differently. So whether we're talking about feeding our own microbes, or we're talking about feeding a microbe off the shelf, or we're talking about feeding a microbe that came from somebody else's stool, we really still need to think about how we're feeding them.
What I'm saying here isn't controversial. In fact, the American Gastroenterology Association recommendations on probiotic use in adults for gastrointestinal health pours a lot of cold water on the health claims that you often read around probiotics. So I very, very seldom, if ever, recommend them.
Almost every single microbiome researcher today is saying that fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi and pickles are microbiome rock stars. They deliver both live probiotic bacteria and prebiotic fiber that nourish beneficial gut bacteria.
A study by researchers at Stanford University found that eating fermented foods regularly resulted in substantial reductions in over a dozen different inflammatory compounds in the body. It also resulted in more diversity of gut bacteria. The more fermented foods people ate, the greater the number of microbial species that bloomed in their guts.
And unlike probiotic supplements, fermented foods have been part of the human diet for a very, very long time.
Fermented foods, so our krauts, our kefirs, and our kombuchas, these have been around for a long, long time in human civilization. Of course, they were developed before refrigeration. This was ways to preserve your fruits and vegetables and your cabbage and everything so you could have them during the winter months, okay? And they have these unique taste profiles, and they've certainly come back into vogue in the last few years, which is great because they're so tasty and they add their complex flavor patterns to your already healthy plant-based diet. When you look at a fermented food, the clue is in the word fermented. It's fermentable. So we're adding bacteria to that food, which begin fermenting, the same process that happens in our gut microbiome. So that fermentation process is giving you readily available the short-chain fatty acids, but it's also producing unique prebiotic fibers and unique microbiome available carbohydrates in that fermented food that you're just not going to get anywhere else. So it's a great way to improve your gut microbial diversity even further. And there was a really interesting study published just last year, which looked at the impact of a high fiber diet and a high fermented food diet on the human gut microbiome, and revealed for the first time that fermented foods do bring their own unique benefits that you may not simply get by eating a high fiber diet.
I think fermented foods are a plus. I certainly include kimchi, other fermented foods in my diet. I think this is a really wonderful, natural way to emulate what our ancestors did. Now, our ancestors didn't have refrigeration and pretty much ate what they could find on the ground, or maybe if they were lucky, once in a while they'd kill an animal, they would eat that too. But pretty much our diet ancestrally was based upon what we would find on the ground. And let's be clear, oftentimes what you find on the ground is rotting fruits and vegetables. And when you're feast and famine, when you are at risk for dying of starvation, you're going to eat stuff that's already started to rot. And what is rotting? Well, rotting is fermentation. When a food begins to rot, bacteria in that food are digesting it and replicating and fermenting. That's what that process is. And as such, fermented foods have always been a part of the human experience, at least as it relates to our ancestors. And it was and is a way that we continue to colonize our gut with those bacteria. So I'm very much in favor of the idea of fermenting food, as well as buying foods that are fermented, things like kimchi and sauerkraut, etc., and consuming them. I think that's a real handy way of further inoculating the gut with good bacteria.
One of the hottest new product categories on natural food store shelves is what are called prebiotic sodas. Some deliver as much as 9 grams of prebiotic fiber and 2 to 5 grams of added sugars in a fizzy and delicious soda. Others deliver as little as 2 grams of prebiotic fiber and larger amounts of added sugars. Are these sodas healthy?
I don't think they have benefit. Typically, they have artificial sweeteners in them, which we now know that even stevia, very disruptive to the gut microbiome. Not only can they decrease species diversity, create more pathogenic bacteria, but it turns out they can interfere with the communication pathways between the bacteria that are essential for a lot of these bodily functions. Because gut bacteria aren't just involved in digesting food. They're involved in synthesizing vitamins, synthesizing neurotoxins, training the immune system, turning genes on and off. So lots of important function. And it's critical that these bacteria can communicate. So we have good evidence that a lot of these non-nutritive sweeteners interfere with that process. They typically also have a lot of chemicals in them. Some of them not as many chemicals as traditional soda, but these are food-derived products. They are not food. And that is very different from eating an apple or some kimchi or some kale. And so I'm very wary of these bioengineered foods. And many of them meet the criteria for ultra-processed foods, which we know are problematic, not just for our gut, but also for cognition, etc. So I understand that people, you get tired of just drinking water all the time. But I think it's really important that people understand that these are not health foods.
There are a lot of marketing claims made for stevia and monk fruit and other no-calorie sweeteners. Food manufacturers say they deliver a sweet flavor without added sugar calories, and so they can bring down obesity and all the other negative effects that come with added sugars. If you believed them, you'd think we can have our cake and eat it too.
Yes, and a little bit of these sweeteners probably won't hurt you. But there is compelling evidence, as Dr. Chutkan just mentioned, that stevia, as well as saccharin and sucralose and aspartame, are damaging to the microbiome. And there's another problem with some of these sweeteners that is not widely recognized, and that's that nearly all stevia and monk fruit products sold today contain erythritol. In fact, erythritol is the largest ingredient by weight in most powdered stevia and monk fruit products. It's used to add bulk to and reduce the price of stevia and monk fruit products, but it's been linked to increased rates of strokes, heart attacks, and death. In one study, people who had higher blood levels of erythritol had double the risk for both heart attack and stroke compared to those with lower levels.
And there's still another problem with all non-caloric sweeteners. While they do contain very few, if any, calories, studies have consistently found that they still promote weight gain. And while a debate rages as to whether some of them also cause cancer, most of them are clearly linked to increased cravings for sweet foods, increased dental cavities, as well as negative changes to the gut microbiome. Xylitol and other processed sugar alcohols like sorbitol and maltitol and isobalt may actually be good for fighting cavities, but they can give you indigestion if you consume them in too large amounts.
It gives you pause, doesn't it? I think the prudent thing is to realize that these aren't ingredients we should be consuming regularly, if at all. I generally stay away from non-caloric sweeteners, including stevia and monk fruit. As somebody once said, the person who tries to get something for nothing generally winds up getting nothing for something.
So true. And now I want to talk about another group of substances that, when used rightly, can brighten our lives considerably but when overused, create major problems for our microbiomes.
You're referring to antibiotics?
Of course, I am indeed. Ridding our bodies of nasty microorganisms has been a goal of medicine at least since the invention of the microscope. Antibiotics may be the signature medical achievement of the 20th century. Drugs like penicillin and streptomycin have saved millions of lives. No one wants to bring back the killers of yesteryears. No one wants to see outbreaks of cholera, tuberculosis, or bacterial meningitis. But even when antibiotics are saving our lives by killing dangerous pathogens, they're also massacring multitudes of our beneficial gut bacteria.
There are no antibiotics that only kill pathogens. And to be clear, antibiotics are one of the greatest inventions in our medical history. They have saved millions of lives over around a little less than a century they've been around. So as I talk about antibiotics and the effect on the gut and the gut microbiome, I want to be very clear that I'm very grateful as a physician that we have access to these powerful drugs. That being said, there's always also no question that they're currently being overused, and that is leading to problems, not just for the individual, because antibiotics, while they may be killing a pathogen, they're also destroying droves of our healthy, essential gut bacteria. And as bad luck would have it, these essential bacteria are typically more susceptible to the antibiotic than the pathogen. So this is a problem for the individual, but it's also a problem for society because we're creating drug-resistant microbes that are now not susceptible to any antibiotic. And we're seeing that a large percentage of infections that people are dying from, they're dying because the pathogen is resistant to all the antibiotics because we have so overused antibiotics, not just in our medical practice, but in the food industry. We know that somewhere between 50 and 80% of all the antibiotics sold in the US are used in the animal industry for fattening of the animals and other purposes. So it's a huge problem, this issue of antibiotic resistance. Again, not just what it's doing for us as individuals, and the connection between reducing microbes and dementia and autoimmune disease and all these things that we're seeing, as well as for us as a society.
You may have noticed that if you take the time to smell your food, to appreciate it, and to savor the anticipation of it, you'll secrete more saliva. And that's important because saliva is critical to the digestive process. Salivary enzymes, it turns out, help to break down food. And in conjunction with chewing, they make it possible for you to absorb and use the nutrients that you consume.
And it's not just saliva. In response to smells and tastes, your stomach also goes to work preparing the way. It produces the gastric juices and specific enzymes that will be needed to digest the particular foods that are about to come in. So by the time your meal reaches your belly is ready and waiting. Even before you take your first bite, you're engaged in an extraordinary interactive process that can literally make the difference between critical nutrients being absorbed or going in one end and out the other.
When you take the time to savor your food, to smell it, to chew it, to enjoy it, you're shifting the course of your digestive destiny. You're setting yourself up to absorb more efficiently what you're eating.
Even before the food enters our body, digestion starts. So the smell of food, the sight of food, for some people, even the thought of food can start to stimulate those digestive enzymes that are released by the salivary glands. And the purpose of those salivary enzymes is to start digesting the food or getting it ready for digestion right when it gets into our mouth. So we actually clean the mouth as part of the digestive tract. Then it travels down the tubular structure, the esophagus, and that it travels by peristalsis, sort of like how certain worms move, and and of course gravity helps, so it gets down to the stomach. And then in the stomach is where a lot of other enzymatic digestive processes start to happen. So for example, enzymes like gastrin and stomach acid that are secreted there. And the food also gets churned up into small particles called chyme. And then that gets moved down into the small intestine where the actual nutrient absorption happens. So again, you can start to see that these are all very specialized functions that are unique to these different parts of the intestine. Chewing is important to break the food down into these very small particles so that the enzymes can act on them. And so that process, you can think of it as either part of the digestive process or maybe a pre-digestive process. But the food particles have to be broken down into very small pieces so that the enzymes can work on them and the nutrients can be extracted, both the macronutrients, the protein, fat, carbohydrate, and the micronutrients. And so chewing is a first part of that process of making chyme, which is that the products of digestion in very small pieces. So it's really important that we chew our food well so that we can also stimulate those salivary enzymes to start working on the food and breaking it down. There are incredible health benefits to eating slowly, to eating mindfully, to thinking about the food. I would add to being grateful for the food also, because just as the sight or the smell of food can start to induce that enzymatic process, you want to make sure you have enough time for those digestive enzymes, literally those juices, to start going to be able to work on your food. And so mindful eating, slow eating, in terms of satiety, with so many people struggling with being overweight and having obesity, it's also important to give your stomach a chance to feel full. When you're just sort of guzzling your food and eating really fast, you might continue eating beyond the point of satiety, where your stomach feels full and you know that you've had enough. And you think about the stomach capacity. Our stomach is about the size of a fist, and full, it's maybe an open fist. But you can shovel in a lot of food quickly in a way that overwhelms the capacity of the stomach and not really feel it. If you're eating more slowly and mindfully, you're going to feel that satiety as the stomach expands and know that you're full, or maybe even a little bit before you're completely full and know that this is probably a good time to stop eating. So that's another important reason why it's important to eat slowly, mindfully, and I think gratefully.
I've been thinking about why I don't always eat slowly, mindfully, and gratefully. And I've realized that more often than I like to admit, I take food for granted. I can so easily forget that for most of our ancestors, access to enough food was the paramount struggle of their lives.
I'm reminded of the old saying that she who has forgotten the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness.
So true, so true. Although more times than I care to remember, I've lost touch with my feelings of gratitude. I can't tell you how much energy I've wasted with stupid resentments and pointless grudges. My tendency has been to give thanks only when things seem to be going well. When things aren't proceeding according to my preferences, I sometimes lose sight of my blessings. I forget that healthy food is precious. I take it for granted.
I'm sure you're not alone in that, and this is one of the reasons why people have traditionally said grace before meals. The saying of grace can be a way of connecting to our sense of gratitude and connection. It's a way to slow down, to relax, to let go of all the busyness and worries of the day and open to the food that we're about to receive.
There are many ways to establish peace and appreciation as the primary tones of our meals. One simple method is to just take a few moments to observe silence, maybe holding the hands of others at your table, if that's comfortable.
Or if you're eating alone, you can take a moment to hold your bowl or plate and smell the aromas and enjoy the peace of your solitude.
What's important is to find ways to bless your meals that feel comfortable and good to you.
In our family, we've got a particular mealtime tradition that brings us together in, I think, a sweet way. Sometimes we gather around the table and each person has a turn to share one rose, one thorn, and one bud from their day. Roses are a beautiful thing that happened today that we're grateful for. A thorn is something sad or painful or hard that's going on. And a bud is something we're hopeful about or that we're looking forward to. So we go around the table and everyone shares just one rose, one thorn, and one bud. And it gives us a chance for everyone to get some attention. And sometimes we learn more about each other's days and feelings and what's really happening for everyone in the family. It kind of builds connection.
That's a really beautiful tradition you've created, Ocean. And it reminds me of the old saying that among friends, joys shared are doubled and sorrows shared are halved. A process like rose, thorn, and bud provides a chance to share joys and sorrows and can be really bonding for a family.
Yes, it really can. I grew up having family dinners with you and my mom together every night, and I'm so grateful for that. We often shared about our joys, And our sorrows too.
Yes, I remember that well. And now we're learning that eating gratefully, eating mindfully, eating slowly, taking time to appreciate our food is good for our microbiomes. And it turns out that our microbiomes aren't just inside us, they're on our skin too.
It's interesting when we talk about microbiome. I mean, technically, the term can mean the microbiome, can mean the bacterial constituents, or even beyond bacteria, in any particular environment. So there's actually a skin microbiome. You have certain bacteria on your skin that live on your skin. There's an oral microbiome, which can determine whether you get cavities or bad breath, or right. And so typically we're talking about the colon microbiome because it's the most diverse and most and kind of largest by number. But you're absolutely right. There's a skin microbiome, and so there's people with like atopic dermatitis and other conditions that can be helped by changes. They seem to be brought on by changes in one's microbiome. There are changes with aging that happen that actually create a certain smell. There's actually a name for it in Japanese of kind of the smell of old people. That's because you have a different microbiome and actually break down sweat compounds and produces different odor than it does before. That's one of the reasons that there was a study showing that people who moisturize their skin regularly can drop their levels of inflammation in their body. And we think it's because of that barrier protection, because we didn't really evolve using soap. I mean, soap is wonderful for hygiene, but it can kind of strip away some of the natural oils in our skin. And it's possible that decrease in barrier function may play a role in causing inflammation throughout the body, and so that's one of the roles that may be playing. The acne is a matter of the skin microbiome. These little particular bacteria that form acne are living on your skin all the time. It can be affected, and the oral microbiome produces the leads to the formation of nitric oxide when we eat nitrate-rich vegetables like beet juice or beetroot or arugula or other dark green leafy vegetables. So it matters what bacteria. We don't want to. So by using an antiseptic, antibacterial mouthwash, we're actually reducing our ability to lower our blood pressures by eating greens and things like that. And so it's amazing, this kind of symbiosis that we and other kingdoms, the bacterial kingdom, have established for kind of mutual benefit. But so we should not kind of take that for granted.
How we interact with our environment is a really important player in our skin microbial health, but also our gut microbial health and our overall microbial health. And actually, you asked about how we interact with our environment, and excessive washing and excess hygiene may be an issue. Of course, look, we're very lucky as humans now that we have clean drinking water and clean fruits and vegetables, so we're not contracting dysentery on a weekly basis. I mean, hygiene has brought a lot of benefits to humans, but sometimes I worry that maybe we've gone a little bit too far down that road, and that's just one aspect of the kind of 21st century lifestyle that is able to deplete our microbiome and deplete our gut microbial health. So if you spend a lot of time reading the research on the things that help to build a healthy human microbiome, it's really interesting that you read these papers and you list out the habits and you realize, well, these are the same habits that build a healthy human. Okay, so if I was going to give you maybe 5 or 6 tips to ensure your gut microbial health, what would I tell you? Okay, eat a healthy, plant-based or plant-predominant diet with a variety of plants. Spend time in nature. Where do our microbes come from? We know that individuals who live in rural settings have a more diverse and healthy gut microbiome than those who live in cities or in built-up industrial environments. So spend time in nature. Get out to the park, get in the garden, dig some soil. Don't be afraid to spend time in nature. Any natural environment is a good idea.
As we near the end of this episode, I want to return to the topic of fiber and summarize some of what we've learned, because fiber plays such a critical role in your gut health. As humans, we lack the enzymes to digest fiber, but not all the fiber we eat comes out the other end. Our gut microbes have the specialized enzymes that we humans lack. In deconstructing the fiber we've consumed, they create powerful anti-inflammatory compounds called short-chain fatty acids, including, notably, one called butyrate. These short-chain fatty acids are a medicine our bodies crave.
And another one of the many important things we've learned about fiber is that each type of plant provides a unique type of fiber, and that each type of microbe in our guts likes its own specific types of fiber. As a result, we need many, many different kinds of plants to feed the diversity of microbes that we need to be healthy.
Yes, which makes it all the more important that 95% of Americans are not getting anything close to an adequate amount of fiber. In fact, the average American gets less than half the recommended amount, which is already set far lower than what would be optimal for human health. Only 1 in every 20 of us meet even the daily recommended fiber intake.
Part of the reason for that is that there is no fiber whatsoever in any animal-derived food. There's no fiber in any form of meat or dairy, and that includes yogurt and kefir, and there's no fiber in eggs or in fish. So obviously, the more meat, dairy, and eggs we eat, the more deficient in fiber we will tend to be. Plus, it's the healthful, fiber-rich plant foods that feed our beneficial gut bacteria, while meats and other animal products tend to promote unhealthy gut bacteria.
The National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey is an enormous survey that links Americans' eating habits and their health. And according to the data from this survey, the less fiber people eat, the more likely they are to be depressed. And the differences are dramatic.
We've had the extraordinary good fortune in this episode to hear from some of the most prominent and most knowledgeable gastroenterologists in the world. But it is still the case, unfortunately, that most gastroenterologists, like most other doctors, don't see a connection between what people are eating and the medical problems they have.
Most gastroenterologists, like most doctors, do not ask people what they're eating. And so, although this seems in some ways probably to your community very basic, well, of course it matters, it's taken a little bit longer to permeate into the medical community. But the nice thing is that we're seeing scientific evidence, we're seeing studies and interventional studies that both short-term and long-term that are showing that what we eat can make a difference.
Any diet that gets you to cut down on ultra-processed foods is going to have beneficial effects. Ultra-processed foods form about 60% of our calories. Most of our diet is junk, right? So junk food, most of the stuff we eat. But if you go from this much terrible food down to this much terrible food, well, no wonder you feel better, right? You're eating fewer donuts, you're feeling better, right? But imagine having the best of both worlds, where all you're eating is good foods, where it's just like, well, I, stopped, hitting my foot with a hammer and I used a smaller hammer now. Okay, that's good. We're making progress. I have a less inflamed foot because I'm using a smaller hammer. Okay, why beat yourself up at all?
That's a good question. Why beat yourself up at all?
I think a lot of us just don't realize that certain things that are normalized all around us are actually causing our body's injury on a daily basis. But of course, here in this summit, we're learning the truth so that we can do something different. And I just want to take a moment to appreciate that you've been inspiring people to do something different for almost the entire time that I've been alive. You've been at this more than 40 years now. That's a long time to do anything, and an incredibly long time to be a leading advocate for dramatic change in some of our most basic habits. So what's kept you motivated to carry on with this work for so long? And what do you love about what you do?
Oh, so many things. I love seeing people adopt a whole foods, plant-strong diet because I love seeing people become healthier on every level. I love seeing their minds become clearer and their creativity becoming more powerful. When people eat more consciously, they don't just become physically healthier, they become more present and more alive. They're able to walk through the world with their hearts more open and to give from a cup that is full rather than from a cup that is empty. I love seeing people commit to a healthier way of life because I love seeing the light in their eyes become brighter and the joy in their hearts spreading to their loved ones, and eventually, as the ripples continue to widen, spreading in some way throughout the whole Earth community. Really, I consider it a privilege to do the work I do. It's a joy to see people learning how to lighten their ecological footprint and become more vital and vibrant at the same time. The food revolution is about changing our food system and our eating choices so that they can come to be more in alignment with our own good and the greater good. And it's also about attuning our lives to the greater purposes for which we have taken birth. It's about being our best possible selves.
I love that. Being our best possible selves so we can give our gifts and hopefully find ways to more deeply enjoy our lives. In the next episode, we're going to go a lot deeper on one of the most critical aspects of enjoying our lives, which is feeling good and also looking good. We're going to explore beauty, radiance from the inside out, and how your food and lifestyle choices affect your hair, your skin, and your nails. We'll see you there. Let's do this. Thank you so much for sharing in that powerful episode. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Make sure you refresh those comments using the button provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Carolyn said, thank you. This information is really helpful and exactly what I was looking for. This is so lifestyle oriented and shows how many things affect our gut. Yes, it really does, Carolyn, and our gut, in turn, affects so many things. Margie said, I have struggled with IBS for over a year, not finding out what foods were causing it. Then March 29, I was hospitalized with atrial fibrillation. After cardioversion, I went 100% on an AFib diet, eliminating alcohol, caffeine, and sugar, totally focusing on healthy vegetables and fruits. 3 weeks later, I have had no IBS. Nails and hair look great and are growing and feeling great. Thank you for all your information. It is totally encouraging me that I am doing it right, feeling stronger and healthier every day. Thank you. Margie, thank you. What a wonderful story. Of course, I'm sorry that you went through such a challenging process, but what a wonderful story that you have found a path towards feeling better and stronger and healthier. Thank you for sharing that with us. Shraddha wrote, would these videos be available for later viewing and refreshing? I'm a registered dietitian and I'm blown away by how little I knew about food. And Barbara replied to Shraddha, they are available in replay until the next day when the next episode becomes available. If you purchase the empowerment package, you will have access to everything in the summit for life. Well worth it. I buy it every year. Well, thanks so much, Shraddha, for learning and engaging and participating in this summit as a dietitian. What an opportunity you have to apply all this directly in a way that touches people's lives. And Barbara, thank you for investing in the empowerment package. I'm so glad that you're finding it valuable. And thank you for your support of our work as well. Now, Shraddha, I do want to make sure you know, and anyone else who's interested in diving deeper into these topics, we do offer a plant-based coaching certification. If you go to certification.foodrevolution.org, you can learn more about it. The next cohort launches in January of 2025, and you can get on the waiting list now to be notified as soon as registrations open for that. Lori said, aha moment. If we approach the health of our microbiome with whole foods plant-based eating, not as a diet, which is truly connected to our brain, we can, in essence, help millions of people with mental health issues and not address mental health as the primary issue. Well, yeah, Lori, it is really fascinating how these things all connect. And, medicine tends to focus on treating the symptoms of disease. And sometimes, of course, that can be life-saving and incredibly important. But when you focus on root cause, all kinds of things are impacted. And considering that, for example, the majority of the neurotransmitters that affect our mood are produced in the gut, it really does make sense that when we focus on gut health first, we can send out ripples that can affect how we feel as well as how our brain functions, as well as cardiovascular health, as well as bringing down inflammation, which can have a host of positive benefits on our well-being. Helen said, so eating fruits and veggies to get the fiber, we need to eat the skins too. Is this safe when most fruits and veggies we get in the store are sprayed with pesticides? Helen, thanks for asking. So yes, we are seeing more and more how important it is to eat the skins of fruits and vegetables. They often have the most nutrients and the most fiber. So yes, that is true. Now, pesticides is a great topic. Thank you for raising it. So pesticides is a real concern. A lot of our crops today are being sprayed with neurotoxic pesticides. Many of them are endocrine disruptors, and some of them are linked to increased risk of cancer. One of the top reasons that I like to avoid pesticides when I can is because I'm concerned about the environmental impact and the impact on the farm workers and farmers who are out there in the fields all day growing our food, and many of them have increased risk of cancer because of it. So I want to care for them, and I want to respect them, and I don't want them to grow food that I eat with poisons, also because I don't want to bring those poisons into my body. Now, here's the thing to remember for all the folks who get scared about fruits and vegetables if they're not growing organically. There's a lot of studies showing us that people live longer and healthier and have less disease when they eat more fruits and vegetables, like a lot of them. Most of the fruits and vegetables in those studies were not grown organically, and people still got tremendous benefit. So don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. If you're choosing between non-organic kale and an organic donut, go for the kale. That said, there are a lot of benefits to going organic when you can for the environment, for farm workers, and for your own health. So the one approach is to review. We have actually an article on our website. If you go to foodrevolution.org and search for pesticides, you'll find it. We review a lot of the most and least pesticide contaminated crops. You can also go to Environmental Working Group has a Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen list they update every year, where they look at the most and least pesticide contaminated crops. The spoiler alert on this is that the least pesticide contaminated crops usually have some kind of a shell that you don't eat, such as watermelon or mango or papaya or a coconut or other foods that have a shell around the outside. Avocado is another great example because those shells tend to protect the insides from a lot of those pesticide residues. But with things like apples or berries or leafy greens, they of course don't have that protection. So what should you do? Well, one thing you can do is soak your vegetables or fruits in a solution of about 1 gallon of water to 1 tablespoon of baking soda. Research shows that 85 to 100% of pesticide residues are removed when you do that for about 10 minutes. So that's something you can do if you can't afford organic and you want to eat fruits and vegetables. Then you can soak them in, again, a solution of about 1 gallon of water to 1 tablespoon of baking soda for about 10 minutes, and that will remove most of the residues. Jill said, I've been dealing with multiple sclerosis for the last 10 years, and until very recently, the only help for me was a pill. Now, after learning more and more about nutrition, the gut-brain connection, neuroplasticity, and meditation, I have not only regained more of my motor function than I was expected to be able to, but also changed the way I view my life as a whole. I'm very grateful for programs like Food Revolution Summit that educate, empower, and inspire better health and a better life. Truly, thank you for what you are doing to help so many people. Jill, thank you for sharing this, and I think you're touching on 2 things that I want to take a little deeper here. One is that a lot of the healthy diet and lifestyle protocols we're talking about here don't just address specific symptoms or illnesses. They may contribute to a healthier, more meaningful sense of life. For example, stress reduction doesn't just reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease or a heart attack. It also gives you more peace, more resilience, more ability to respond to challenges that you may face in your life with peace, with resilience, and with presence. The other piece I want to talk about is multiple sclerosis specifically, because there actually are a lot of mechanisms by which a whole foods plant-based diet can be beneficial for preventing and for treating MS. One of these is that it can help change the gut microbiome in a beneficial way. It can also be good for the immune system. decreasing oxidative stress and chronic inflammation, and also increasing blood flow throughout your body, including to your brain. One of our past Food Revolution Summit speakers was Dr. Sarai Stancic. Dr. Stancic has had multiple sclerosis for decades, and she reversed severe symptoms and went on to become a marathon runner with a whole foods plant-based diet as the cornerstone of her treatment regimen. You may want to check out her story or learn more about her work. Again, her name is Dr. Sarai Stancic, Stancic. Earl said, went plant-based in 2020 and went from 250 pounds to 185 pounds. Reversed type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. No more meds. Feel fantastic. Awesome, Earl. Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. We're going to be focusing more on type 2 diabetes in episode 6 when we look at what we call diabesity. And we're going to be focusing more on cardiovascular health and how to bring down high blood pressure and high cholesterol in episode 5 when we focus on cardiovascular health. So glad you're here, Earl. Wonderful, and thank you for sharing that story. Ruth said, please provide us with references to the studies which are discussed in the summit. This helps so much when talking to friends and family, if the journal article can be referred to. Ruth, thanks for mentioning that. Of course, often in the docuseries, we do show some studies on the screen, which I hope is helpful. But I want to let everybody know that with the empowerment package, you get transcripts of all of the summit episodes, as well as all of the extended interviews with the guest experts. And these are really valuable, particularly because we do actually go through, and our team spends a lot of time on this, adding source links to studies mentioned throughout all of those transcripts. So you can literally just click on a link and boom, you can read the whole study. And that's an incredibly powerful resource if you want to go deeper on any of the issues or convince a doctor or a friend or a loved one about what you're learning, because this isn't just somebody's opinion. Everything we're sharing in this summit is grounded in academic research, highly credible research. Lisa said, just made the pumpkin sunflower milk from the provided recipes while watching this after an overnight soak, and OMG, it is so good. We'll definitely use again. I wanted to use the pulp but couldn't find the flax egg, a goal for next time. Lisa, thanks so much for sharing. For those of you who don't already know, pumpkin sunflower milk is one of the recipes from yesterday, and throughout this summit every day there are 3 more recipes of the day from Nicole D'Andrea Ressert, FRN's lead dietitian and recipe developer. And you will find those on the broadcast page if you scroll on down, and we add 3 more every day at the summit. So glad, Lisa, that you're cooking along as we go here and that you enjoyed that amazing, delicious beverage. Jennifer said, gut health is something I've struggled with my whole life. I've been so thoroughly impressed with how much I'm learning in the past few days. As a nurse and a health promotion disease prevention care coordinator for veterans at the Dayton, Ohio VA hospital, I've taken away so much crucial information to not only better my health, but enhance the health and lives of those I care for. Thank you. Jennifer, I am so glad that you're here and that you're gaining resources that are not only useful for you, but also for the people that you care for. And we want to make it a bit easier for you to do so. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. So you will own all of the transcripts and all of the episodes for life, because I know you will put it to good use in your practice and help a lot of people. So our team will follow up with you. Make sure to check your Facebook messengers for the details. And I want to speak a word now about nurses because, of course, Jennifer is a nurse, and nurses are an often underappreciated resource in healthcare, but profoundly important. In fact, today, nurses are providing over half the primary care in the United States. They're given more nutritional training than medical doctors. They spend more time with patients. And there was a recent study which found that nurses are the most trusted profession in the United States. In fact, 78% of U.S. adults currently believe that nurses have high honesty and ethical standards. Well, that trust has been hard-earned. So for all the nurses out there, thank you for your service and your work. And I hope you're gaining valuable insights in this summit as well. Taylor said, can you talk about xylitol? Many studies show that it can be good for oral health, especially xylitol mouth rinses after a meal. Is it okay to use, or is it severely disruptive to the gut? What if you're just rinsing out your mouth after a meal but not swallowing? Thanks. Well, Taylor, thanks for asking. Of course, we keep learning more about sweeteners and how some of the artificial sweeteners have problems. Xylitol is certainly a processed item. It is, based on the research that we have available, generally considered safe for humans, at least in small amounts. It has an alkalizing effect on saliva, which may be good for dental health. There is research showing that people using xylitol mints, for example, may have better oral health. And in fact, I personally enjoy xylitol mints once or twice a day, and I think that may be beneficial. However, as with all sugar alcohols, consuming too much is linked to digestive symptoms like bloating and loose stools. Too much is generally considered more than about 20 grams in a day. So using it in small amounts seems to be fine, including in chewing gums and things like that. But it probably isn't wise to use it as a replacement in baking and stuff like that. LJPG said, please clarify the value of collagen, if any. Thank you. Well, stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm not going to address collagen now. I'm going to let that be a little cliffhanger because you're going to learn a lot more about the value and importance of collagen for skin health and elasticity and overall vitality and anti-aging. You're also going to learn more about what degrades it and what promotes it in the human body. And also we're going to go deeper into collagen supplements and the pros and cons of them. So stay tuned for tomorrow. Gloria said, I switched to swerve and monk fruit for baking several years ago because they were touted as natural and safe. But now I'm learning they're not. Are we better off just using cane sugar? Are dates, honey, and maple syrup okay for baking? Please tell me what you use when baking now. Well, Gloria, thanks for asking. There are lots of options, and there's no one-size-fits-all perfect solution because it depends what you're baking. Now, from a health standpoint, the best sweeteners almost invariably are going to be whole fruits like bananas and mangoes, berries and apples and pineapple. And if you want something sweeter than that, then dates and date paste work really well. And these are all whole foods that include fiber and phytonutrients and beneficial compounds along with the sweetness that seems to mitigate blood sugar imbalance and also add value to your overall nutritional profile. If you want something more intensely sweet for certain kinds of baking, then at Food Revolution Network, we sometimes use maple syrup, or some folks use honey or molasses, and these are probably reasonable options in moderation for most people. Now, at FRN, we love sharing amazing recipes that enable you to enjoy whole foods, plant-based diets and make it super delicious. And one of the top resources we've got in that is our Whole Life Club membership community. And I just want to mention that as a resource for you all. When you get an empowerment package, you have an opportunity also as a next step to join Whole Life Club on a 30-day free trial. This is our ongoing membership community. There's about 10,000 people in there, and we provide ongoing, consistent, wind-at-your-back support in there, including new recipes, action of the week videos, guest expert interviews where you can ask questions, a moderated community forum, and lots more. But I think what people love the most in Whole Life Club is the recipes. There's over 1,000 whole foods plant-based recipes, and you can search by ingredient, you can search by meal type, all sorts of things, so you can find the specific things that work for you. You can also screen out based on allergens. And there's a lot of amazing desserts in there that feature Nicole D'Andrea Russert's amazing recipes using whole foods, especially dates, to help sweeten things. And they taste amazing. Shelley Drimon said, in September 2023, my partner went to the ER with tingling and numbness that started creeping up his leg, and 12 hours later, he was paralyzed from the waist down. Eventually diagnosed with idiopathic transverse myelitis, he spent 2 weeks in the neuro ward getting pumped full of IV antibiotics and steroids. During all this, I had a precancerous lump removed from my breast, ended up in the ER with a racing heart and dangerously high blood pressure. My son was hospitalized with AFib, and I became my partner's full-time caregiver. It was a lot for both of us. I was determined when I got him home to do everything I could for both of us to not spiral into depression and anxiety and to help clean up the mess in his gut. I started with our diet. We went whole foods plant-based, and within a month, we both felt so much better. We sleep better, our moods have improved. We have more energy and just seem happier. All this considering our ongoing situation with his diagnosis. My mission is to become a certified mental wellness and plant-based coach because I know this revolution will change lives. If you have not started a plant-based diet, please consider doing so now. And if you are just starting out, please stick with it because it works. Well, Shelley, thank you so much for sharing your story and your husband's story. We're sending so much love to both of you. That must have been so scary and painful. I'm so glad that you're finding respite, support, and relief and resource in this dietary path, and so much love to you and your husband. And since you mentioned becoming a plant-based health coach, I want to make sure you know again about certification.foodrevolution.org, FRN's plant-based coaching certification. It may be a good resource for you if you aren't already involved. Carolyn asked, do you get the same brain health benefits from decaf coffee and tea? I try not to do caffeine. Well, Carolyn, great question. And absolutely, caffeine is not beneficial for everybody. It doesn't work for everybody, and you certainly don't need to consume caffeine to get the benefits of tea and coffee. We actually have a lot of studies out showing us that decaffeinated coffee has about 75% of the antioxidants of the caffeinated version, which is less, but still potentially quite beneficial because coffee is loaded with antioxidants. And while there's a lot of decaffeination methods that involve the use of solvents like methylene chloride or ethyl acetate, the Swiss water process is more environmentally friendly and it's a chemical-free method. So the Swiss water process is probably what you may want to look for if you're going to go for decaf. Now, for decaffeinated green tea, it still has beneficial catechins and EGCG, which are the compounds that were mentioned in yesterday's episode by Dr. Aisha Sherzai. So green tea, decaffeinated green tea can be great. And herbal tea is, of course, naturally caffeine-free and brings its own amazing benefits. Special plug here for hibiscus tea, which turns out to be the most antioxidant-loaded beverage any of us can drink, at least that I know of. So hibiscus tea is pretty awesome. Now, Cassie Rice said, I do my best to avoid soy because it interferes with hormones. Is there a way to stop eating dairy-based cheese and butter without eating soy, excuse me? Well, Cassie, we'll be discussing soy a lot more in episode 7. And yes, there are some great non-dairy cheese and butter alternatives that are soy-free. In fact, most of them are soy-free. A lot of them, the cheeses are based around cashews or other nuts. Great ones are fermented. Most of the non-dairy butters use some mix of oils that includes coconut oil or palm oil, which has its pros and cons, but may be a good alternative to cow butter. But I want to talk about soy a bit here since you brought it up. Now, the research actually tells us that for most people, soy and soy-based products offer a lot of health benefits, and they're often included as part of a balanced diet. Turns out soybeans are an excellent source of plant-based protein, as well as fiber and a bunch of essential nutrients. Soy has been found to be beneficial for heart health. Studies show that soy protein, when it's used to replace animal protein, can lower LDL cholesterol and reduce the risk of heart disease. Research also shows that it's beneficial for prostate health. Soy contains compounds that are called isoflavones, which are phytoestrogens that have been associated with lower risk of prostate cancer. And these isoflavones may have a positive benefit for bone health, particularly in menopausal women. Now, you mentioned hormones. Concerns have been raised about soy's potential estrogenic effects because of its isoflavone content. But current scientific evidence tells us that moderate soy consumption doesn't adversely affect testosterone levels or have any feminizing effects in men. In fact, some studies indicate that soy consumption may be even beneficial for male hormones, and it can have very beneficial effects for women. It's linked with reduced risk of hormone-dependent cancers, and it can make menopause symptoms milder. Now, personally, I'm partial to the more unrefined forms of soy. I like to avoid soy protein isolate in general. I'm a big fan of sprouted and cooked soybeans. You can actually sprout and cook soybeans yourself. Also tempeh edamame, miso, soy milk, and tofu. And keep in mind that soy is often genetically engineered. So if that's a concern for you, then look for organic or certified non-GMO soy products. And I do avoid soybean oil, which is linked with a bunch of health problems, including potentially increased risk of cancer. So I hope that's helpful to you. And we'll go into soy in more depth in episode 7. Lori said, this needs to be on all mainstream media platforms. 60 Minutes, Good Morning America, etc. Amazingly helpful information. Lori, I could not agree with you more. If anybody watching right now works with mainstream media platforms and wants to bring some of this message in, please do. And please feel free to reach out to us if we can support in any way. We want to get this word out as widely as possible. Kimberly said, thank you for these amazing insights and sharing this incredible information. I'm a breast cancer survivor for 2.5 years now, and not once during my diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up visits was nutrition emphasized as an important tool for survivorship, aside from discouraging the use of alcohol. I had to seek and pay out of pocket for functional medicine and supplement guidance, and as you know, this is not cheap. Since switching to a low-inflammatory Mediterranean plant-heavy eating plan and adding key supplements, I'm feeling much improved and actually feel like I may live a longer and happier life. This additional information is invaluable. Keep the revolution going. Hugs and love. Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience. I'm so glad that you're getting these benefits, and I'm so frustrated with you that you weren't told about this in your journey. My own aunt nearly died from cancer a few years ago, and not once in her entire journey as she almost died or after did any of her doctors discuss food at all with her. And I'm sure they thought they were being kind because they were like, oh my gosh, you're going through such a tough journey and we just want to make your life easier. The last thing we want to do is, on top of everything else, take away the foods that give you comfort. I'm sure they thought that. But they were not being kind because my aunt wanted to live. She didn't go through chemotherapy or life-altering surgeries because she wanted to have a picnic at the park. She went through it because she wanted to survive. And it wasn't just about pleasure, it was about living. And so in some ways, it's almost as if these doctors were implying that life-altering surgeries and chemotherapy might be less disruptive than changing her diet. My goodness, it's so important that we change this system. And I thank you for sharing your story and doing the work to learn on your own. And the good news is that we don't have to wait for medical practice or government or big agribusiness or the food industry to change its practices for us to start learning and getting more informed and taking advantage of the enormous benefits that can come from giving our bodies the right fuel. Now, some of you may want to go deeper even than we're going in these episodes into the specific topics with some of the specific experts that we're interviewing. And if that's the case, I want to make sure that you are taking advantage of the extended interviews that we are making available every day of this summit. So today we have 3 extended interviews that are featured. One is with Dr. Alan Desmond on healing your gut, how to eat for digestive wellness. One is with Dr. Michael Greger on how to prevent and reverse disease, what the research says. And the third for today is Dr. Robin Shutkin on the microbiome solution, how to heal your body from the inside out. These interviews are incredibly powerful. We were only able to use a few clips and highlights in the episodes. But if you want to go deeper, please do. And of course, if you get the empowerment package, you get all of the extended interviews too, along with transcripts that include source links to the studies that are cited for free, along with your empowerment package. So please feel free to check that out if you haven't already. And the free summit includes 3 more of these extended interviews every day on replay as soon as we finish the day's broadcasts. Chris wrote, I've got to say this is my 2nd year attending the summit and there's always something to learn. The content is different, clearly including updated science. I have access to last year's empowerment package and the episodes are indeed different, if anyone's skeptical. Just when I think, I can skip this one, I know a lot about that topic by now, I end up tuning in and having my mind blown without fail. Empowerment is such a good label for your package. I'm not overweight. I'm not battling chronic disease. I'm 42, but I was a convenience-driven vegan. Since getting the empowerment package last year, I've severely reduced my intake of those and sugar as well as alcohol, and my health has soared. The inflammation left my body. Even my ADHD improved out of sight. Thank you. You guys are lifesavers and true revolutionaries. Let's all be trendsetters. Well, Chris, thank you so much for those wonderful words. And it's true, everything in the summit is completely brand new every year. And thank you for being a part of this journey with us. I'm so happy to hear of the transformation you've experienced. Letitia said, I can't take notes fast enough and would love to watch them again. I also continue to get interruptions while watching the episodes. Letitia, sorry that you're getting interruptions. I'm guessing maybe that's a bandwidth or streaming or internet connectivity issue from wherever you're watching. But we want to make it easier for you, and we don't want you to have to take notes so fast. So we're going to gift you with the empowerment package. So you'll have access to all the recordings and the transcripts for life, so you can watch everything anytime or place you want. And you'll have the transcripts so you can read up on everything. Congratulations. Our team will follow up with you. Be sure to check Facebook Messenger for a message from our team. And congratulations. And congratulations also, and thank you to all of our new empowerment package owners. Aaron from Colorado, Julie from Kentucky, Jamie from New Mexico, Earl from Illinois, Susan from Canada, Fernando from Spain, Sharon from Australia, Gunn from Norway, Tracy from New Hampshire, Linda from West Virginia, Ingrid from the UK, Tracy from New Jersey. Thank you all so much for investing in your health and in our mission. With every empowerment package purchased, you're helping us to carry this work forward and reach a lot more people. And you're also enabling us to fund the planting of another organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community through our partnership with Trees for the Future. So thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone else who's investing in the empowerment package. Carol said, I love how you all present the recipes this year. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. We love presenting the recipes too, and I'm so glad you're enjoying them. Tamara said, watching the dairy segment while drinking your recipe for invigorating tropical green smoothie from the Real Superfoods cookbook. And I'm feeling so much more vital since giving up dairy. Thank you for all you do to educate us and keep us healthy. Awesome, Tamara. And in case anybody doesn't know, Nicole D'Andrea Russer, FRN's lead dietitian, recipe developer, and I did indeed release a cookbook in the last few months. It's called Real Superfoods, Everyday Ingredients to Elevate Your Health. And it's absolutely gorgeous, I've got to say. If you haven't checked it out, the pictures in here, it's just so beautiful. Sorry, had to do a quick show and tell. I think it's the most beautiful book I've ever seen. And Real Superfoods is available wherever books are sold or certainly online. And this dives deep into looking at the top foods that are super healthy, super nourishing, super accessible, super affordable, and super delicious when you know what to do with them, which is why it's a cookbook. Now you get some of Nicole's amazing recipes every day of this summit, and now I want to introduce today's recipes of the day. First, we have sweet potato mini drop biscuits. So you can savor the sweet side of health with these biscuits. These little delights are a gut's best friend and a taste bud's dream. And they give you a biscuit that you can feel good about eating, whether you're spreading on some nut butter or a snack that's better than the rest, or dunking them in your favorite plant-powered soup or stew. These biscuits are sure to root their way into your heart and diet. Next, we have velvety asparagus soup, which is also Nicole's recipe demo video of the day. So you can see how she prepares this in her own kitchen if you scroll on down on the broadcast page to the recipe demo videos. This soup adds a splash of vitality to your meals, and it blends smooth, rich flavors with the digestive benefits of fiber-laden asparagus. It's a great companion to a bunch of different plant-based dishes, and you can make it in just 30 minutes, including prep time. Next, we have Farmer's Market salad with miso peanut dressing. Even without a trip to the farmer's market, you can still enjoy the freshness of farm to table with this amazing salad and dressing. The salad is like a rainbow on your plate, full of veggies that do wonders for your gut, thanks to the prebiotics and probiotics in the mix. It's super tasty, and it's a treat for your taste buds and for your microbiome. And the dressing's amazing as well. So check out all these recipes of the day. Every day of the summit, we add 3 more. Liz wrote to us and said, advice please, since I've gone vegan, my fingernails break off and my nails have vertical lines. What supplements do I need to add to my diet and how much? Well, Liz, thanks for asking. So vertical lines can often be common and are not necessarily a cause for concern. But since you noticed this change along with breakage, since you went vegan, it could be linked to a nutrition issue because good nutrition is important for strong and growing nails. Now, some key nutrients that support nail growth include protein, omega-3 fatty acids, biotin, B12, folate, vitamin C, and also iron, zinc, and magnesium. So we generally focus at FRN on a whole food approach first because that's the best place to get your nutrients from. But a lot of people need a B12 supplement and also a vitamin D3 supplement, as well as a source of omega-3 fatty acids. So you may want to get your individual levels checked by your healthcare provider to make sure that you're where you need to be on some of these. And there are wonderfully nutritious sources of plant-based foods that are packed with omega-3 fatty acids, this particularly the type called ALA, like chia seeds and flax meal, as well as hemp seeds and walnuts. But we all need to convert our ALA into DHA and EPA, and not everybody does so efficiently or effectively, depending in part on the health of your microbiome. So for a lot of people, it's good to get checked for the levels of DHA and EPA as well. If you're not consuming fish, this is particularly noteworthy. And this is why we often suggest a vegan omega-3 supplement that comes from algae. Now, the other nutrients involved with nail health can easily be obtained from whole foods. First, you want to make sure you're getting enough calories and protein every day, and also consuming a variety of foods to make sure you're getting a variety of nutrients. You could also check to make sure you're getting enough by adding your daily food intake into one of the free online nutrient analysis tools like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal. These are just some resources if you're still having concerns even after your diet's essentially healthy, and maybe if your blood levels are looking good, you may find some more information through that process. And you could always consider meeting with a plant-based dietitian or a plant-based coach who can help you assess your diet and see what you might be missing. And if anybody is interested in finding a plant-friendly, plant-based healthcare professional, the Plantrition Project creates a directory of these. If you go to plantrition.org, you can find their directory, and there's practitioners all around the world who list themselves in that directory, from doctors to plant-based coaches and nurses and dietitians. So you can find resources by geography, by area of focus, etc., who could be helpful to you. And by the way, Liz, I think you're going to love tomorrow's broadcast because we're going to dive deep into nail health as well as hair health as well as skin health. We're going to look at beauty from the inside out, what brings about beauty, how we can feel more beautiful, more vibrant, and more alive, and how diet and lifestyle can help. So make sure you join us for all of that tomorrow. We're now approaching the end of day 3 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. And again, to express your opinions on today's episode and the summit so far, and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Make sure to refresh the comments using the button you see there so you can see the latest ones that have been submitted. Come on back and join us tomorrow when we go live at 7:45 Pacific Time, that's 10:45 Eastern, 2:45 p.m. GMT, or at 11 Eastern when we start rolling episode 4, Beauty and Vitality, How to Nurture Healthy Skin, Hair, Nails, and Radiance from the Inside Out. It's going to be amazing, so please come back and join us then. And in the meanwhile, you can post your comments and share in the conversation right on this page. You can watch the replay after we finish here live. The video will automatically pop onto replay. You can watch today's in-depth expert interviews. You can check out the empowerment package. You can enjoy our recipes of the day, including Nicole's amazing recipe demo video, which you'll find right at the bottom of the broadcast page. And we wish you vitality and joy and peace and all good things. This is Ocean Robin signing off from day 3 in the Food Revolution Summit. And now, here's a peek at what's coming up tomorrow. Beauty isn't found in a bottle. It's a radiance that emanates from who we are, from the vitality that we embody. So what supports healthy skin, hair, teeth, and a natural, radiant beauty from within?
It comes from the inside out. We are pretty much all over aesthetics on our planet, very into what a person looks like, and that says beauty, but it doesn't really say beauty as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can be gorgeous looking aesthetically and a demon on the inside. So beauty starts in the heart, as far as I'm concerned.
There's an opportunity for us to feed our own beauty, to contribute to ourselves from the inside out, to treat ourselves the way that we want to be treated so that we can bring beauty into the world, and to realize that beauty isn't just about appearance. It's about how we're being. It's about how we're radiating energy. It's about the compassion and the presence that we bring into the moment.
In this episode, we'll explore the powerful connection between what we eat and how we look and feel. We'll explore the science behind nutrition and natural beauty, showing how a diet rich in certain foods can enhance your innate beauty. Get ready to expand your self-confidence, joy, and love of who you are, from the inside out.
The reason that healthy choices are worth the effort is because you are precious. You are absolutely precious. You are here for a reason. Your life has value. You have value. And you deserve to feel as well as you possibly can and as happy as you possibly can while you have the privilege to be in this body. That's what healthy choices can help you with. It's that simple.
Learn how to eat for beauty. Your life is on the line.
Let's do this. No matter where you come from or what you've been through, the simple truth is you are meant to thrive. You deserve boundless energy, a clear mind, and a lean and healthy body. You deserve to feel confident and clear about what you eat and why. The Food Revolution Summit is packed with insights, and trying to catch and absorb all of them can be hard. That's why we created the Empowerment Package. With your Empowerment Package, you can own the entire summit, plus all the transcripts and loads of bonus materials for life. Absorb this life-changing material at a pace that's comfortable and easy for you. Join in this movement. Support this mission. Buy your Empowerment Package today.